A cold evening settled in as Cleo ignored hunger. His gaze fixed on the horizon, he spotted a shooting star and wished desperately for meat. Bread, anything to fill himself. Countless meteors streaked overhead while Cleo frantically chanted wishes, ignoring his friends shouting behind him. Though his mouth begged for food and money, his heart longed for an ordinary life. Morning light revealed an unfamiliar man awakening nearby, confused and unaware of what had just begun. Sunlight broke through ancient stone as the young man awoke alone in a ruined chamber. He scanned cracked walls and silent statues, struggling to recall how he ended up here. Memories returned: bandit pursuit, a fatal arrow, the cold realization that his life had ended. Yet confusion lingered as he remembered the demi-human girl who might have saved his dying body. Her final words echoed faintly, "I will give my life to you." Then silence followed. Cleo turned at the sound of footsteps and saw a familiar girl approaching slowly. She smiled with relief, admitting she feared he might never wake after collapsing without warning. Before he could speak, she rushed over, asking if anything felt strange or unusual inside him. Recognition struck him hard. It was the demi-human who saved him. Now calling herself Kohaku, confused and alarmed, he demanded answers as she calmly explained her body had shrunk from strain. Kohaku explained she used powerful magic, fought enemies, and revived him at great personal cost. Magical energy depletion had reduced her size, but she assured recovery would eventually restore her form. A thunderous impact shook the ruins, and she urged immediate escape without offering further explanation. Outside, flames rose in the distance. Kolgad's capital burned, war erupting while he slept through the chaos. Racial discrimination forced Kohaku to flee his homeland, seeking safety in a land more accepting of her. While war raged behind them, Kohaku carried Cleo to safety on a massive beast. At her call, he snapped out of thought, realizing she'd cared for him without pause. Riding together again, Cleo devoured food fiercely, his body demanding everything it had long been denied. Sitting in the cart, he quietly apologized for the burden and chaos his condition caused. With sincerity, Cleo acknowledged her sacrifice, finally recognizing she had truly saved his life that day. Cleo admitted his gratitude, unsure of his feelings, yet recognized Kohaku's kindness through everything endured. Suddenly, he blurted out an offer for her to live with him from now on. Kohaku reminded him of his promise made during danger, insisting she'd already accepted the invitation to stay. Confusion took hold when she revealed his house was gone, destroyed after 100 years had passed. She calmly explained his awakening came a full century later. While he struggled to comprehend the truth, Cleo stood in silence, facing unfamiliar lands shaped by a century that passed without him. Kohaku explained it had been exactly 108 years, her magic keeping their bodies untouched by time. He realized peace was gone, his home erased, and the future nothing like he'd once imagined. Even nearby towns were engulfed by conflict, forcing them to abandon hope for quiet and move on. Eventually, they discovered an ancient castle hidden deep within the mountains, untouched and waiting in silence. Cleo spotted a remote shelter, cautious of bandits, but Kohaku reassured him with confidence. Inside, Cleo admitted his strength had diminished drastically, yet Kohaku vowed to protect him regardless. They searched the building and discovered aged liquor, untouched for decades, raising silent questions about its origin. He hesitated, unsure how to proceed, weighed down by doubts and responsibility forming in his heart. Opening up, he confessed everything lost, ready to follow Kohaku's request as an act of gratitude. Kohaku demanded one promise from him. "Survive," Cleo shouted back. Frustrated, she kept repeating it. Confused by her vague request, he expected a grand mission, not just staying alive quietly. After reflecting, Cleo realized even surviving held weight. In this broken world, safety was never guaranteed anymore. With no other path, he considered mercenary work again. Despite her warnings and rising dangers around them, shocking news followed. Battlefields now teemed with monsters, like the bandit leader. He froze in disbelief. She asked him to survive no matter what, but her request lacked clear reasoning. Confused by the vague plea, he expected something greater, like changing the world or ending wars. After reflecting, they realized even basic survival had become difficult amid war. torn lands and disappearing safe zones. Lacking income, he considered mercenary work, but she warned against reckless decisions in a dangerous age. Her warning grew clearer: battlefields teemed with monsters like that bandit, making survival far from simple. Wars erupted as warriors wielding unique swords clashed, each weapon unleashing a power unlike any other. Learning of the divergent sword wars, he struggled to grasp how chaotic the world had become. Kohaku explained the sword's power, prompting him to take one, hoping it would equalize the battlefield. Excited by the weapon's strength, he shouted boldly, convinced it would secure his future and fortune. Fueled by desperation and hope, Cleo unleashed a mighty strike, testing the sword's overwhelming hidden force. Treeing the sword, he stood silently before realizing his body lacked the aptitude to wield it. Instead of judgment, she calmly explained that compatibility varied, and he'd eventually find one uniquely suited. He asked for the map, a quiet determination surfacing behind his frustration and temporary disappointment. Old liquor barrels lined the forgotten castle, long abandoned, offering no answers, only silence and stale air. Wandering its halls alone, he sat in thought, unable to shake the emptiness from failure. Kohaku noticed his silence and asked what thoughts had been weighing on him since earlier. Instead of despair, he offered a bold idea, turning the ruined castle into their new home. She agreed quickly, finding the idea practical, but he suddenly proposed something unexpected, another suggestion entirely. To survive better, he declared it necessary to find a divergent sword truly meant for him. His plan: open a roadside tavern and wait for someone with a compatible sword. Cleo anticipated doubt, but insisted the liquor they found could anchor a profitable tavern venture. Mercenaries from nearby countries would flock there, grateful for drink even at a slightly higher price. Running a tavern could fund their survival and sword search. Kohaku considered the plan surprisingly practical. Her bright smile returned as she approved, eager to try something new with hopeful energy. Though questions remained, both felt motivated. Managing a tavern seemed fun, and they finally had direction. At sunrise, their goal was set to build the most successful tavern across the entire continent. They agreed on a modest plot, balancing tavern preparations with the search for a sword. To build anything lasting, they started with farming, laying the groundwork before pursuing larger ambitions ahead. Soil quality raised concerns, but survival required growing food amid the uncertainty of a war-torn land. Various seeds were planted, including tomatoes and beans, forming a field they hoped would soon flourish. Thanks to her foresight and supplies, Cleo realized survival alone would have been nearly impossible without Kohaku. Cleo and Kohaku planned a wheat field next, dreaming of future bread and freshly brewed beer. Their plans paused as Cleo discovered the water barrels were nearly empty. Despite recent effort, water wasn't scarce, but the soil demanded too much, forcing frequent trips just to maintain growth. Unfortunately, the spring was 4 hours away, turning each journey into a full-day burden for both. They realized the risk was worse than the distance. Armed patrols now roamed the path. Bandits charged through the region, fragmented and aggressive, each group claiming territory in post-war chaos. Moving closer to water seemed logical, but Cleo feared it would pull them into conflict. They debated trade-offs. Proximity meant exposure, while isolation offered safety from raiders seeking better land to occupy. Despite returning with water, Cleo remained uneasy, knowing their survival depended on solving this growing vulnerability. Determined to protect their home, he quietly began digging, hoping to uncover a spring underground. Digging carefully, Cleo searched for signs of moisture, hoping a hidden spring still remained beneath. Grooves etched into the ancient structure suggested a water system once ran through this abandoned fortress. Without a nearby river, Kohaku believed a spring once supplied the castle's long-lost inhabitants. Regret wasn't an option. Cleo resolved to try everything, rather than abandon the possibility entirely. Instead of relying on Cleo's magic, Kohaku offered to find proper tools within the ruins. Cleo searched the castle basement but found nothing useful. Only shadows and a cracked wall. Tools were lacking. Winter approached, and memories of poverty flooded him while planning future survival needs. Shaking off nostalgia, he rose with resolve, determined to keep looking for any tools. Suddenly, he spotted an unnatural surface, called Kohaku over, and uncovered a mysterious hidden staircase. Both descended eagerly, curious about buried secrets, wondering if treasure might solve their growing hardships. Kohaku jokes about a monster, startling Cleo mid-step as he nearly stumbles on stairs. He regains balance, and excitement builds as the staircase's end finally comes into view. A single shaft of light illuminates a mysterious sword placed atop an ornate pedestal. Cleo steps closer, puzzled by the sword's condition, and puzzled why it is the only one. His hands grasp it firmly, claiming it as his own, certain he's discovered a powerful treasure. Repeated attempts to pull the sword failed, his strength proving useless against its stubborn grip. She stepped forward with determination, gripping the hilt and preparing herself to try with force. As the blade came loose, water erupted in waves, startling them with its sheer force. Astonishment spread as they realized the sword mimicked the elemental power from the bandit's weapon. Confirmation came swiftly: the sword was the spring's source, solving their water crisis at last. Concern filled her face as uncontrollable water flowed endlessly from the sword in her grasp. Despite her efforts, her body froze, magic drained, while the sword refused to release her hands. He rushed forward, gripping the hilt desperately, trying to save her from the sword's grip. A powerful surge blasted them apart, though she was free. The overflowing water showed no sign of stopping. With rising panic, he carried her to safety, realizing they might be drowning in their success. Cleo ran up the stairs, heart racing as a tidal surge chased him upward. Water exploded skyward through every crevice of the fortress, flooding the cliffs with unstoppable force. Both collapsed on dry ground, breathless but alive, barely escaping the violent underground torrent below. Kohaku observed the aftermath, surprised a divergent sword held such uncontrollable and destructive capabilities. Although the sword was lost, Cleo acknowledged their success. Water now flowed freely through the land. Animals began returning to the area, splashing freely as streams of water flowed peacefully again. New waterways transformed the barren land, making the fortress an unexpectedly livable and fertile settlement. As tomatoes ripened near the roadside, Cleo and Kohaku completed their modest tavern project. The exterior looked crude, but they remained hopeful and committed to gradually improving the structure. Inside, they planned basic services, liquor and water first, then meals once crops grew sufficiently. Though unsure at first, Cleo realized he felt genuine excitement seeing their progress take shape. Hope wavered as rampant bandit activity made opening the tavern a dangerous, uncertain decision ahead. Cleo feared the bandits might discover the revitalized old castle and overwhelm their defenses. Kohaku trembled at Cleo's doubts, devastated by the thought of abandoning their shared dream. Seeing her determination, Cleo reconsidered and resolved to move forward despite the growing threats. Contrary to his worries, the tavern's quiet days brought peace and a slow rhythm. Though customers hadn't come yet, hoofprints nearby hinted that travelers passed without noticing them. Kohaku embraced the quiet moment, believing that peaceful days were valuable, despite slow progress. Relaxing on the cliff, Cleo acknowledged the calm had its own kind of reward. A month had passed since awakening in this era, yet Kohaku remained a mystery. He didn't know her past, her goal, or why she'd been protecting him constantly. Before he could ask, Kohaku spotted movement in the distance. Someone unknown was approaching fast. They spotted figures approaching fast, unsure if they were customers, allies, or something far worse. A knight named Safiya arrived, declaring their tavern illegal under the Gald Kingdom's authority. She discovered Kohaku's handmade sign, realizing it drew them in from 15 minutes away. Cleo and Kohaku explained they believed the land unclaimed, unaware it now belonged to Gald. Safiya announced Gald's war victory, granted them this region, and demanded they vacate it immediately. Instead of resisting, they proposed to seek official permission directly from the Kingdom of Gald. Safiya agreed, but suddenly declared Kohaku under arrest due to her demi-human identity status. She claimed Kohaku was an illegal immigrant and would remain jailed until a judgment passed. Cleo's temper snapped after maintaining civility, furious at the unfair arrest and blatant discrimination. Insults erupted from both sides, escalating tensions as tempers flared and restraint quickly vanished altogether. Weapons drawn, both fighters stepped forward, determined to settle the rising conflict with steel. Despite Kohaku's plea, Cleo charged, disgusted by Safiya's arrogance and thirst for dominance. Blades clashed violently as soldiers watched, surprised by the intensity of the unexpected duel. Cleo landed hits, but lacked strength behind them. Safiya acknowledged his surprising level of skill, She unleashed a sudden power strike, launching Cleo back and revealing her overwhelming physical might. Cleo and Kohaku realized Safia's power likely came from wielding a true divergent sword. Despite possessing a divergent sword, her technique lacked refinement and didn't compare to stronger foes. Suddenly, she lunged forward, announcing a full power strike imbued with her weapon's mysterious force. He narrowly dodged the impact, recognizing she had power, but lacked precision and tactical control. His counterattack landed close, startling everyone as Safia froze, narrowly avoiding a clean defeat. With sword pointed at Safia, Cleo mocked her weakness, confident she'd lost the fight. He ridiculed her strength, comparing her poorly even to the bandits he previously defeated. By mercenary code, she now owed obedience or retreat. Cleo urged her to withdraw peacefully. Unexpected energy burst forth as Safia unleashed hidden power, catching everyone off guard with its intensity. Kohaku scolded Cleo for pushing too far, her rage flaring with unexpected and terrifying force. Safia unleashed wild energy, laughing uncontrollably as her chaotic power forced her allies to retreat. Her blast struck their tavern, shattering stone and shocking Kohaku as destruction unfolded instantly. Cleo realized her unstable power made her dangerous, yet also created a perfect escape window. Kohaku, devastated by the tavern's ruin, turned away while Safia searched for her missing opponent. Determined to end things, Safia spotted Cleo's trail and prepared a final overwhelming strike. Cleo launched a powerful punch that sent the knight flying, smashing the ground with fury. Dust settled as the knight crashed hard. Cleo and the man checked for signs. Acknowledging her strength, the man praised Cleo, who reminded him she wanted him alive. Her glare rumbled with anger. Cleo didn't forgive easily, making him panic and apologize. Warning him clearly, she threatened to punch his face if he acted reckless again. Evening settled as Cleo's group shared drinks around camp, drawn by the aroma of rare liquor. With mugs raised, villagers marveled at its flavor while Cleo proudly urged support for the liquor trade. Nearby, Kohaku and Safia reflected on their earlier clash, exchanging heartfelt apologies beside the rocky hut. Safia bowed in regret, but Kohaku dismissed concern, reminding her they had already bought plenty of liquor anyway. Suddenly embraced, Kohaku stood still as Safia expressed gratitude, calling her presence comforting like an older sister. She slammed her cup down, demanding respect, liquor payments, and acknowledgement of her rank and name. Angrily drinking, she proved her strength, declaring her tolerance, and insisting Cleo witness her bold apology firsthand. Over drinks, Safia vented frustrations about responsibility, rising martial law, and the burden of her title. Her voice broke. Despite her efforts, no praise came. The weight of duty wore her down. Kohaku revealed shocking news. A swordsman killed 100 soldiers. Cleo reacted, realizing this threat couldn't be ignored. Legends told of a demon commanding lightning, inspiring fear through horns and devastating power in battle. Eyewitnesses confirmed he moved faster than arrows, overwhelming divergent sword users with sheer agility and precision. Suspicions arose he might be a spy, a killer, or simply an unmatched, dangerous swordsman. Although assigned to investigate, Safia found nothing. Frustration peaked, and shame stopped her from returning empty-handed. Head lowered, she offered a quiet apology, reflecting on her outbursts and the pressure she carried. Horses gathered as Safia prepared to leave, offering apologies while trying to mend her behavior gracefully. With a confident farewell she rode off. Cleo shouted encouragement, still unsure how she'd manage alone. 3 days seemed to pass during travel, leaving the group tired but relieved after the tense mission. Despite profits and permission gained, doubts lingered about the swordsman's motives and the truth behind his crimes. Cautious planning began. Magical recovery still incomplete. They debated cost, effective defenses like traps instead of hiring guards. Cleo rolled the barrel carefully, reminding Kohaku that every coin earned must be spent wisely. Reaching the entrance, they sensed movement inside the stone building and paused, unsure what danger awaited. Tension climbed fast. It wasn't just one presence, multiple figures hid inside, raising everyone's immediate concern. A masked figure lunged from the shadows, aiming straight for Cleo with deadly intent and brutal speed. Kohaku reacted swiftly, summoning magic while enemies scattered. Their calm journey had just turned into a sudden ambush. A cloaked figure suddenly appeared before Cleo and Kohaku, his presence unnoticed until too late. Kohaku warned Cleo the enemy's weapon, likely concealed movement, a rare and dangerous divergent sword ability. Surrounding the path, numerous cloaked enemies emerged. Cleo and Kohaku were completely surrounded, without warning or sound. Assessing the situation quickly, Cleo panicked. Kohaku calmly reassured him and told him not to stray. Recognizing the masks, Cleo revealed the truth. These weren't strangers, they belonged to a feared assassin's guild. The Three-Eyed Mask Guild had existed for over a century, feared across every dark corner. Despite royal security, even kings fell to their blades. Resistance meant nothing once marked for death. As Cleo panicked, a mysterious figure emerged through lightning and smoke, unshaken by the assassin's presence. The assassins flinched in surprise. Cleo realized this stranger wasn't ordinary and might shift the battle. Wielding horns and a deadly glare, the newcomer warned the assassins to retreat or die. Crackling energy surged from his fingertips as masked assassins closed in from every direction. Sparks erupted midair as cloaked enemies launched, only to be struck down by explosive force. Landing hard, he shattered the ground, stunning nearby attackers, before leaping again with deadly precision and speed, in rapid succession. Cloaks flew as his blade carved through the enemy with unstoppable momentum. Surrounded by scorched bodies, he stood silent while Cleo and Kohaku watched, stunned by his strength. Cleo recognized him instantly. That deadly aura, lightning control, and horn confirmed the infamous lightning swordsman. Assassins who survived scattered into the distance. The swordsman watched silently, surprised they could still flee. Tension rose sharply as Cleo panicked. The horned man turned and locked eyes without hesitation. Dropping into a stance, he assessed Kohaku carefully, noting her hidden strength behind a calm face. Without hesitation, she activated her magic. Kohaku told Cleo to hide, now taking the threat seriously. Kohaku floated crystal shards into the air. Cleo panicked, sensing a dangerous magical shift coming. Reacting instinctively, Cleo grabbed her mid-cast. He shouted, trying to stop whatever she planned to unleash next. Confused by Cleo's sudden outburst, Kohaku calmly insisted she was fine and ready to keep fighting. His frustration exploded. He feared their powers, not their loss. His dream home stood in danger. Ignoring their strength, he confronted the horned swordsman, demanding peace and warning not to interfere again. With a serious face, he surprised everyone by bluntly declaring his true concern: he was hungry. Neither expected that request. Despite everything, he humbly asked if they could spare him a meal. Without hesitation, he devoured the food. Cleo watched silently while asking if it actually tasted good. Polite thanks followed. Though grateful, he casually complained about vegetables and asked if more meat existed. Watching him eat peacefully, Cleo realized this feared warrior felt oddly normal, nothing like the legends described. Kohaku assured him she remained stronger. If trouble came, she'd suppress it with force alone. Grateful for his interruption, she admitted she would have fought if he hadn't intervened sooner. Though unsure at first, he was praised. His actions helped avoid chaos and save valuable supplies. She reminded him that not every conflict needs violence. Sometimes restraint leads to a better outcome. Realizing his limits, he decided to contribute using strategy, not strength, while the swordsman kept eating. Kohaku predicted his strength would grow. Cleo agreed, uneasy about how dangerous the swordsman might become. While chewing calmly, he heard Kohaku suggest recruiting him. Cleo shouted, shocked by the unexpected proposal. Shrike calmly ate beside the fire. Unaware, Kohaku suggested recruiting him as their next comrade. Cleo objected, listing the assassin guild and massacre rumors, while Kohaku insisted on verifying them personally. Despite hesitation, Cleo agreed. He couldn't risk Kohaku's safety and chose to confront the man himself. Upon arrival, Cleo found the house empty. A sudden tremor erupted nearby, catching him off guard. Perched on a cliff, the man muttered about false alarms as Cleo shouted from below. Cleo questioned the clear river's origin. The black-haired man found no fish while searching downstream. Learning the river was newly formed, Cleo scolded him for the reckless attempt to fish. Though meek in demeanor, the stranger accepted Cleo's scolding quietly and agreed to wait without complaint. Handing over soap, Cleo insisted he clean himself. The man reluctantly admitted he hadn't bathed recently. As he entered the water, Cleo noticed his scars, questioning the pain he'd endured alone. He apologized for the trouble and asked to wash thoroughly, including his clothes. In the river, while scrubbing his clothes, Cleo brought up rumors linking him to mass killings in Gauld. Without denying anything, the stranger admitted difficulty living while constantly pursued by assassins and misunderstood for unknown reasons. Cleo was shocked when Shrike revealed he hadn't killed anyone during the supposed massacre in Gauld. Instead of answers, he only recalled chaos and fled, confused by the soldiers turning on each other. When asked about the assassins, Shrike hesitated before revealing he fled from the slave district. Captured as a child, he'd been forced into slavery. Then gladiator fights staged for noble entertainment. Each day brought blood and survival. Cleo finally understood the scars Shrike carried on his body. Even now, Shrike couldn't allow death. A goal still burned, pushing him forward, despite everything endured. That purpose was clear in his eyes. He lived not to escape, but to claim vengeance. Cleo felt a chill run down his spine, stunned by the intensity behind Shrike's eyes. After returning, he collapsed beside Kohaku, relieved that Shrike wasn't as dangerous as people believed. They discussed Shrike's burden, despite understanding. Cleo doubted someone like him would accept any invitation to join. She admitted sensing overwhelming bloodlust, something only comparable to her encounter with a ruthless bandit leader. Shrike's thoughts shifted. Hunger reminded him he'd left a meal unfinished and hoped soup remained. Kohaku urged Cleo to try inviting Shrike. Though doubtful, he reluctantly agreed to give it effort. After searching briefly, Cleo spotted Shrike near the barrels and approached to start a conversation again. Shrike discovered a mysterious item. His expression shifted seriously, demanding to know where it had come from. Everyone gathered around. Shrike examined the guard and hesitantly identified it based on an old illustration. According to him, the weapon matched Blaze, one of the 4 royal demon swords. Cleo explained the sword's origin, passed down in his village since a swordsman saved them. Without warning, Shrike drew the blade, announcing he'd borrow it before anyone could stop him. Power radiated from the hilt. Shrike confirmed its identity, stunned to find such a weapon here. Energy exploded around him, flame like tendrils surged violently, while Cleo stared in disbelief, overwhelmed by sudden power. Immersed in the aura, Shrike smiled with awe, declaring the sensation something truly beyond expectation. Shrike emerged, his sword engulfed in blaze, while Cleo and the girl froze in shock. Uncontrollable flames twisted around him, responding to no will, yet striking with terrifying force and purpose. Overwhelmed by chaos, Shrike shouted at the power surging through him, demanding it recognize his command. Straining to remain conscious, he gasped for breath, unaware of the eyes silently watching his struggle unfold. His body finally collapsed. A wicked smile followed, whispering victory as long as Blaze remained his weapon. Cleo rushed to Shrike's side as Kohaku calmly confirmed he had only fainted from exhaustion. While they spoke, the black flames smoldered nearby, untouched and unextinguished, spreading toward their scattered camp supplies. Night settled over the desert. Cleo stirred the pot, reflecting on their journey and simple meals. Shrike finally woke up and stepped outside, greeted by Cleo, who noted the sky had already darkened. With tension fading, Shrike apologized. He still trembled from the memory of barely surviving the uncontrollable inferno. Then Cleo stirred the pot calmly, assuring Shrike that food was ready and nothing had been forgotten. Shrike stood silent beneath the stars, gaze unwavering, and asked Cleo for a serious favor. He requested the sword Blaze, promising to return it. Though Cleo called him reckless for asking, Cleo refused outright, questioning his intentions. Shrike admitted his strength alone couldn't fulfill what he needed. Without hesitation, Shrike declared his goal to gain power strong enough to destroy an entire nation. Shrike finally revealed the truth: his homeland, the kingdom of Romal Asika, had been completely destroyed. Romal Asika's peace shattered overnight. Invaders stormed in, aiming to seize the kingdom's legendary royal demon swords. Countless enemy soldiers descended. Among them were divergent sword users, overpowering defenders until the massacre became unstoppable. Surrender meant nothing. Those left behind were butchered as survivors escaped into darkness and trees. While fleeing with another, Shrike was spotted. A soldier's arrow flew, piercing the night without warning. A soldier laughed after his arrow struck. Shrike turned, heart pounding, as the girl collapsed. He rushed to help her flee. Enemy shouted, but she refused to let him stay behind, bloodied and shaking. She urged him forward, whispering her final request as soldiers closed in behind them. Shrike lowered his head, admitting she wasn't related by blood, but he'd raised and protected her since childhood, captured soon after he was sold. Yet gladiator life brought strength, perfectly suited for future vengeance. Lightning magic wasn't from Blaze. Cleo realized it was honed through brutal gladiator training alone. During escape from slavery, Shrike gained skills fighting countless foes. Compared to that, Cleo felt fortunate. He admitted the truth. Enemy strength was far greater than expected. More power was still needed. Once again, Shrike made his plea. With firm resolve, he asked to borrow the sword Blaze. Cleo understood everything. But even with empathy, he couldn't allow Blaze to be handed over. He warned him bluntly Romaliska's forces were powerful, and even Blaze wouldn't guarantee survival. Refusal remained firm. Lending Blaze risked too much, even if it cost them a potential ally despite the tension. Dinner resumed. Kohaku doubted Shrike would act recklessly, unless he was completely irrational. Next morning arrived. Without prompting, Shrike appeared carrying water, greeting them with unexpected calm and collected energy. He explained his plan to help them with chores, earning favor and a second chance at Blaze. Suspicion flared when Cleo questioned him, but Shrike calmly denied any plan to steal Blaze. Introducing himself as Shrike, he declared he'd remain until Blaze was his, despite constant rejection. A fortress stood completed. Cleo and Kohaku had finished the task without delay. While others relaxed, Cleo stayed behind, quietly working. Kohaku translated his soft words to the group. A full week passed. Shrike wondered if Cleo truly planned to remain until receiving the sword. Their rebuilding accelerated with Cleo's help. The tavern expanded into a proper campsite with added rooms. Optimism grew fast. Customers were expected soon, but someone unexpected arrived before they were ready. Rumors from Gald's kingdom raised concern. They feared Shrike's presence might soon attract unwanted eyes. A cloaked stranger arrived with armored carriages, their appearance silent, their intent unknown, their presence unnerving. Despite the ominous look, only one person approached, prompting suspicion about possible bandits in disguise. The hooded figure expressed surprise at finding life here and insisted there was no danger. Claiming to be merchants, the Melkus caravan explained they traveled to sell goods throughout the region. Merchandise overflowed in variety from dishes to spices. Their supplies far exceeded expectations and needs. Not just food or cookware, chickens, tools, and everyday goods were all being offered for trade. Cold weather loomed. Warm coats and clothing became desirable as they browsed through the merchant stock. With limited coins, careful spending was necessary. They couldn't afford to waste resources on everything. Despite the tight budget, they tried bargaining, hoping to buy more without losing essential funds. The merchant leaned in with intensity, causing immediate confusion. Cleo struggled to understand the sudden closeness. Eyes shifted to Kohaku as a question arose. Did they truly live here permanently? Now war had driven them away. In its place, they began rebuilding their lives with a tavern. An unexpected offer came. Chickens, spices, and even lumen-set stones were added generously to the deal. Rather than charity, the merchant called it something else. His support was a calculated investment in potential. Curious about the merchant's motives, they questioned his decision to help complete strangers so suddenly. Past travels gave him experience. He judged potential by instinct, spotting growth in those others might overlook. He recognized Kohaku's remarkable aura, sensing capabilities across roles: warrior, tactician, even monarch hidden behind her innocent appearance. Her youthful face concealed wisdom. To him, she seemed more like a sage than a child. Cleo expected praise, but was labeled ordinary. The accuracy embarrassed him more than any insult could have. Despite lacking a standout aura, Cleo was told he held something rare and unexplainable allure. Makira admitted confusion, unable to articulate his instinct, which only deepened Cleo's mistrust and suspicion. As proof of goodwill, he offered every item at their price, declaring genuine interest in friendship. Initial hesitation lingered, but Makira's sincerity slowly won them over through logic, humility, and gentle persistence. Finally revealing his identity, he introduced himself as Makira, the Melkus caravan's captain and leader. Makira removed the mask, revealing a graceful face and formally introducing herself with quiet confidence. Before departing, she issued a warning about Gald, the kingdom that had taken over the region. She advised them to avoid contact with Gald entirely and seek help from safer nations instead. Recent civil unrest made the kingdom unstable, with tensions that could escalate into a widespread conflict. Remaining uninvolved would be wise. Any entanglement with Gald now could lead to serious consequences later. Sophia, Knight of Gald, stood proudly with her sword and steed, sworn to protect honor. Breathing heavily through the forest shadows, she fled duty abandoned, shame gripping every exhausted step forward. Steel clanged behind her. A bounty hunter emerged, eyes wide with greed and blade drawn. Before she could react, a cloaked figure struck fast. More enemies arrived, shouting, closing in swiftly. 10 days earlier, her mission began. But now, Gald burned civil war, erupting behind her absence. Enemy forces stormed the kingdom, while soldiers were away. Caught unprepared, the army quickly lost ground. Flames devoured the capital. By the time reinforcements arrived, the city had already fallen. Despite their numbers, Gald's army was defeated. Mercenaries had weakened them before the rebel army attacked. The rebel leader, Aratus Dekala, was a famed general and Gald's first divergent swordsman. Safia stared ahead, trembling. The man threatening her kingdom was also her elder brother. A sharp blade was raised. No escape remained. A single question demanded an impossible answer. Without hesitation, she met the incoming brute, steel clashing violently in the midst of trees. Her sword held strong, but strength alone faltered. He mocked her tenacity without showing restraint. Blunt force struck hard, pain exploded through her skull as consciousness began to slip away. Mockery followed each blow. Battle-hardened mercenary claimed victory, confident no divergent sword could stop him. Blood dripping, breath shallow, she crouched low as mercenaries argued over her worth and survival. Captivity felt certain. They discussed payment for her corpse, valuing her only as a target. One mercenary leaned in close, eyes leering, twisted curiosity replacing any notion of restraint or reason. Words grew darker. He claimed her like property, making vile plans under the guise of profit. She exploded with fury. Pain forgotten, she struck back before he could speak again. Mocking laughter faded when she stepped forward. That blow wasn't her limit, it was just survival instinct. Panic rose as terrain closed in. Water roared below. Mercenaries believed her path had ended. A sharp breath. One final leap. No hesitation followed as her body vanished into the air. Cries erupted behind her. No gold could be claimed without a corpse to show proof. Darkness surrounded her sinking form. Water pulled fiercely while her limbs fought to resist drowning. Tears streamed as exhaustion hit. She emerged from the river, alive yet utterly broken and alone. A distant memory returned. Young Hope once asked about creating an ideal, peaceful, unified country someday. He answered sincerely, a world without hatred, one people could live in freely without fear. That day she had promised strength, determined to help her brother realize his noble dream. But now rain fell cold. Was this ideal worth sacrificing comrades, loyalty, and honor? Eyes filled with pain, she questioned his purpose, wondering if her life still held meaning. Wind howled. Footsteps staggered forward. Strength fading, she collapsed beneath relentless rain and distant enemy stares. Everything went numb, limbs refused to rise. Her breath slowed, unable to push against exhaustion. Memories blurred. Darkness crept in. Thoughts circled whether this was truly where her journey would end. Faint voices reached her. Strangers called out, rushing from a nearby tavern to help. Noise returned first. A strange voice spoke cheerfully beside her, while fur scattered across the room. Safia woke abruptly in a small stone room, heart racing, confusion tightening her chest. Morning light filtered softly through the window. She sat quietly, trying to remember what had happened. Wrapped in a cloak, Safia wandered outside the tower. puzzled by the castle's lack of guards. From the shadows, Cleo emerged, relieved to see her alive, though she looked stunned and lost. He explained everything. She collapsed outside. Kohaku found her and cared for her throughout. Kohaku quietly led the guest to wait nearby, assuring him that Sophia would awaken soon. Cleo greeted the morning with a yawn, unaware of the emotional weight waiting inside. While discussing the castle, he explained Kohaku had discovered it, not intending to break any law. Sophia admitted she was no longer a knight, her voice heavy with unspoken regret and pain. Tears fell as she confessed the truth when everything crumbled. She ran away without looking back. Despite her knighthood, she never lifted a sword against the rebels and ultimately fled instead. Her voice broke as she revealed the rebel leader, the one she couldn't face, was family. That brother, despite injuries and setbacks, kept fighting to build a peaceful, united Gaul for everyone. Prosperity turned to rot. The kingdom's victory bred corruption, arrogance, and cruelty among its rulers and people. Thou nations fall, her brother rejected the cruelty, and never accepted power gained through such injustice. Witnessing comrades fall into corruption and cruelty, she could no longer bear the weight of loyalty. Even after everything, memories of shared laughter and hardship made her hesitate to raise a blade. Family ties pulled just as painfully. Her brother's image lingered with warmth, guilt, and unspoken farewell. Sophia became trapped between two paths, unable to choose, lost amid duty, expectation, and personal despair. Tears continued falling as she apologized, unsure if anyone could understand the burden she still carried. Cleo sighed, admitting he wasn't the right person to hear deep confessions or offer comfort. Though awkward, he handed her coffee, trying to help in his own clumsy roundabout way. Steam rose between them as Sophia questioned whether fleeing had truly been such a terrible choice. Neither claimed to have answers, yet both believed survival itself was worth recognizing and gently respecting. In the quiet that followed, Cleo smiled, grateful they could share warm coffee together. Now steam rose between them, as she sipped quietly, tasting something bitter, yet oddly comforting and warm. In front of the newly rebuilt tavern, everyone stood impressed by the solid repaired structure. Though construction was difficult, support and forgiveness turned the awkward moment into light-hearted laughter inside the cozy space. With renewed energy, Cleo declared the tavern open, assigning simple tasks while waiting for customers. Plans to build a nearby pond began, aiming to ease water needs and welcome travelers alike. She insisted on helping, her voice rising as if proving her strength mattered more than rest. Proposing a building contest, she challenged Cleo, who declined, finding the whole idea unnecessary and tiring. Reality sank in as exhaustion and lack of manpower made the project feel endlessly far off. When asked her plans, she admitted quietly there was nowhere left she could return to. Cleo offered her a place to stay, not out of pity, but quiet understanding. Multiple riders approached fast. Cleo reacted instinctively, unaware whether visitors meant trouble or something else. An intimidating group arrived with smug smiles, raising suspicion about their intentions and demanding someone show themselves. Cleo noticed Sophia's tense posture as the strangers mocked and closed in without fear or shame. Rather than back down, he firmly warned them that violence wouldn't be tolerated in their tavern. Tension dropped slightly when their leader clarified they were mercenaries, not bandits despite their rough appearance. Mercenaries revealed their goal: capture Sophia, deliver her to Gald, and profit from her betrayal. They confirmed a bounty awaited anyone handing over the rebel leader's sister to the new regime. Cleo learned Sophia faced torture or execution, or worse, used as leverage against her brother's army. Disgusted by the plan, Cleo called it revolting, fury rising at the cruelty being justified. Warnings followed, claiming Sophia's presence would bring danger, as Gald citizens were hated across many lands. Kohaku reminded them risk was theirs to choose, while Cleo lightened the mood with defiance. He couldn't hand over someone facing torture, no matter how little they owed her personally. Sophia tried to leave on her own, believing staying would only bring more danger and enemies. She claimed her fate was sealed, but Cleo insisted no one could decide that yet. While walking toward the mercenaries, she thanked them quietly, choosing goodbye, before anyone else could speak. Steam burst from his nose as he growled, demanding repayment for everything she had cost. Safia stood frozen as he listed her unpaid bills with cold, unwavering seriousness in his tone. Unable to pay, she offered her sword. Even enemies lurking nearby had eyes on its worth. One man volunteered to cover her costs, meals, medicine, coffee, and even damages she'd caused, totaling 10 million galera. Her debt stunned everyone. Echoes of destruction now demanding a steep price. Shock rippled through the group as an unexpected interruption caught everyone's attention mid-discussion. Confrontation escalated when the man declared she must repay an enormous debt through labor. Laughing wildly, he mocked the situation, insisting she'd work for decades to repay everything. Cleo and Kohaku stood their ground as Safia's group closed in, tension escalating fast. The opposing mercenaries erupted, threatening violence while mocking Cleo's ridiculous bounty claim with scornful disbelief. With fury ignited, Cleo shouted back, but Kohaku's silent glare forced him to hesitate mid-charge. He slowly sheathed his sword, ignoring the jeers, while Kohaku and the crowd questioned his resolve. Despite the chaos, Kohaku smiled gently, calling Cleo hopeless as she watched him retreat in silence. Kohaku praised Cleo's restraint, then gently stepped forward, insisting she would handle the situation herself. Shrike descended with lightning speed, shocking Cleo and Kohaku as enemies scrambled to prepare for battle. The soldiers panicked, recognizing Shrike as the feared lightning swordsman, but were struck down before finishing words. Safia stood frozen while others fell, realizing too late that their opponent's strength was far beyond them. Cleo introduced Safia to Shrike, confirming the truth: he was the demonic lightning swordsman they'd been tracking. Shrike possessed enough power to kill 100 men, yet denied responsibility for Gald's massacre. He launched another lightning-charged strike, sending armored soldiers flying before they could react or raise their weapons. Shock spread across their faces as they questioned how an unarmed elf could overpower them effortlessly. Cleo silently watched the destruction while Safia admitted Shrike's strength was genuine and unusually fierce today. Breaking the silence, Safia confessed her hatred for weakness and lies, revealing her disappointment in humanity. He reminded Safia her life was spared once and urged her not to waste it. Safia apologized as Kohaku encouraged hope, believing Shrike could handle the enemies without their help. Suddenly, Shrike was struck mid-battle, hurled through the air by an unseen, powerful attack. Despite the blow, he stood up determined, reluctantly preparing to use a technique that drains him later. Their strongest foe stepped forward, declaring his intent to fight seriously, using a massive divergent sword. Shrike clashed with the brute, narrowly dodging a crushing blow that shattered the battlefield around them. He countered with force, but the giant's durability and grin revealed no damage was truly dealt. Despite unleashing his strength, Shrike's attack failed, and Kohaku quickly explained the elemental mismatch nullified his power. Earth overwhelmed lightning, rendering Shrike's techniques ineffective against a mercenary wielding a divergent sword of ground affinity. As rocks exploded wildly, Shrike dodged relentlessly, silently realizing he needed a new strategy, and possibly his blade. Shrike charged in with sword drawn, clashing fiercely against the mercenary's overwhelming earth-attribute strength. His blade cracked under pressure, leaving Cleo shocked and prompting Kohaku to prepare to assist immediately. Before she could move, Safia stepped forward, declaring with resolve that she would join the fight. Despite her weakened state, she unsheathed her sword, accepting responsibility and refusing to remain a bystander. Energy erupted from Safia's position, drawing attention as she forced the enemy back with sheer magical pressure. Enemy soldiers cheered as their leader activated a stone shield, claiming he was now unstoppable. Shrike's restraint faded. He revealed he had been holding back only out of respect for Kohaku. Before anyone reacted, Safia suddenly surged forward, catching everyone off guard with her speed and determination. The divergent sword's hidden energy began overflowing again. Just as it had during her battle with Cleo, powers surged beyond her control, and the unleashed force erupted skyward, stunning both allies and enemies nearby. Confusion spread as Safia's power surged uncontrollably, prompting Cleo to shout for her to stop. His frustration grew louder, but Safia refused to stand down, trembling under the pressure building inside. She declared her determination to fight alone, remembering her past decision to walk an independent path. That vow gave her strength to live, keep searching for meaning, and choose what feels truly right. Standing before overwhelming force, she realized these enemies marked the beginning of countless future battles ahead. Kohaku prepared to intervene as Sophia struggled, unable to control the overwhelming energy erupting within. Cleo approached calmly and placed a hand on her shoulder, signaling trust in her resolve. He smiled confidently, assuring her he'd intervene only if she intended to throw herself away again. With fire in his voice, he stressed that willpower, not luck, was what truly shaped battles. Living without surrender, despite exhaustion and pursuit, he believed such strength could overcome nearly any adversity. Cleo offered quiet encouragement, reminding her to stay calm and trust her own sword arm. A sudden burst of light tore across the horizon, leaving nearby soldiers frozen in confusion and awe. The battlefield shimmered as Cleo and Sophia faced each other, their swords drawing in surrounding energy. Kohaku watched breathlessly, eyes wide with wonder, as the sacred duel began beneath roaring currents. Sophia stepped forward, steady and fierce, declaring she would test Cleo's resolve and chosen path. She roared with determination, launching forward with her blade, unleashing power gathered through focused training. Facing her challenge, the massive warrior grinned, shouted back, and prepared to meet the duel head. He struck the ground with overwhelming force, tearing the landscape apart to display his monstrous physical dominance. Despite the shockwave, Cleo countered swiftly, slicing through the dust as Sophia tracked every motion. Too late to react, the enemy turned upward, sensing danger only after the strike descended. Cleo leapt high into the sky, gaining altitude as the enemy smirked and retaliated fiercely. The brute launched earth, shattering rocks upward, believing Sophia wouldn't escape the incoming storm of debris. Spectators panicked at the onslaught, but Cleo explained her sword's wind affinity would counter Earth's force. Wind surged around her body, amplifying speed and cutting through falling stones with dazzling precision and power. Even so, the attack narrowly missed as the enemy evaded, taunting her lack of combat experience. Surprising his opponent, Cleo sidestepped and revealed he'd never planned to take the hit directly. Without hesitation, Sophia began channeling energy, initiating a personal sword technique crafted through countless battles and training. Power erupted as she launched forward, unleashing a rapid four-strike thrust that overwhelmed her stunned opponent. Cheers erupted from the onlookers as the massive warrior collapsed, groaning while clutching his bleeding shoulder in pain. Sophia stepped forward calmly and reminded him of mercenary law, obey or die after a duel. Sophia firmly rejected any ties with him, ordering him to leave without returning or interfering again. Despite the defeat, the mercenary growled in frustration, but ultimately admitted continuing would be pointless and wasteful. Watching her stand unfazed, he acknowledged Sophia's resilience, impressed by how fiercely she always resisted pressure. In silence, the battlefield echoed his reluctant respect, a concession earned not through strength, but relentless perseverance. Later that night, Cleo noticed her sitting alone, heavy with unspoken thoughts beneath the ruined sky. Shrike sat quietly, frustrated by her performance, reflecting on how much she still had to improve. Kohaku tried to encourage her with food, while Cleo explained the importance of elemental compatibility. As stars filled the sky, Sophia approached Cleo, expressing quiet gratitude and an apology for earlier. She admitted being a wanted criminal and worried her presence would only cause further trouble here. Determined to change, she declared her resolve to repay an enormous 10 million galera debt. Cleo was stunned to learn the debt story was fake, but Sophia stood firm regardless. She insisted on repaying it with pride, while Cleo accepted it and proposed a celebration. Later that night, uncertainty weighed on her heart, yet she chose to walk this unfamiliar road. Facing forward, she promised silently to live fully, carrying strength and hope into what lies ahead. Everyone gathered for breakfast, enjoying a peaceful meal together after yesterday's chaotic yet unforgettable encounter. While eating, they discussed tasks. Cleo mentioned bathroom construction. Others eagerly offered help with aqueducts and assignments. With serious eyes, Cleo confessed he might wield a rare power-drawing strength from divergent swords directly. His companions reacted with surprise. Kohaku calmly explained Cleo's presence had triggered past sword surges they'd witnessed. Kohaku assured them it was real. Sophia confirmed yesterday's chaos proved his unique ability. Cleo was shocked to hear his unknown power mimicked rare support magic. that boosts divergent swords. Sophia realized her enhanced performance yesterday was due to him, not her own improved technique. Kohaku calmly explained that Cleo's power affects everyone nearby, friend or foe, with no clear distinction or control. Realizing the risk, they agreed to begin special training immediately, so Cleo could master his ability. As the sky cleared, training began. Sophia drew her blade, and Cleo prepared with determination. She sword surged with power beyond control, sending her flying as Cleo panicked from behind. Kohaku calmly explained the overload. Her strength couldn't handle the boost. Unlike yesterday's more experienced mercenary, divergent swords differed in strength, and Cleo's uncontrolled ability intensified their power, regardless of the wielder's experience. Mastery, once achieved, would raise one far above others, but for now, chaos still reigned during training. Attempts to stop her failed. Gripped by power, she couldn't release the sword no matter what. Shrike launched a stun attack, but even that couldn't stop the berserk energy from overwhelming Sophia. Training dragged on for days, with constant failures, wild surges, and unpredictable outbursts during every session. Cleo doubted his role, but Kohaku reaffirmed that his presence was definitely triggering the sword reactions. Though frustrated, everyone paused. Sophia insisted they continue, understanding the urgency behind controlling Cleo's unstable power. She reminded Cleo that stronger foes would come, and mastering his ability was their only chance. Cleo knew the risk, but warned against rushing things, fearing injuries from pushing too hard. Sophia had gathered intelligence while searching for enemies, revealing rising factions threatening regional peace and stability. Varka, a grand bandit alliance, and Diocene, a hostile demi-human nation, had both gained strength. Two more emerged, Liberal, born from rebellion, and the Mundama Order, a death-worshipping militant sect. Each group possessed numerous skilled sword users. If empowered by Cleo, their threat would escalate beyond control. Ambition spread as divergent swords empowered factions, granting them strength once thought impossible for small groups. With new power came larger goals. Many now aimed to conquer the continent through sheer force. Even a single divergent sword had elevated the weak kingdom of Gald into a formidable rising power. Establishing new nations became possible. In this world, swords decided fate, not heritage or bloodlines. Understanding this shift, Cleo realized something vital. Securing a strong, stable base would be essential. Now, training resumed with renewed urgency. Sophia pushed forward, determined to prepare before enemies made their move. Despite determination, fatigue overwhelmed Cleo. Confidence wavered as his ability still felt distant and unresponsive during practice. Kohaku reminded him they were ready from the start. Facing new threats was always anticipated together. Doubts lingered in Cleo's mind. Perhaps Kohaku saved him because of this mysterious sword-drawing ability. Though uncertain, he wondered if her silence held deeper meaning, one he hadn't been ready to confront. Cleo feared an even greater threat could emerge as divergent sword users multiplied across the land. Despite fear, he promised to keep trying. Kohaku offered support as stars lit the sky. Far north, a blizzard swept through the Dalcade kingdom, concealing a dark and violent confrontation underway. Guards screamed in terror, unable to defend themselves. Bodies fell as an unknown force tore through them. Towering above the corpses, a monstrous swordsman laughed wildly, wielding overwhelming power without mercy or hesitation. Fear spread among survivors. Even elite divergent swordsmen fell instantly before the rampage of one man. With eyes wild and voice thundering, Hanliade declared himself a god to be worshipped. Mocking the fallen, he vowed to reign over the continent, claiming the throne through force. Gasps followed as dark energy surrounded his weapon, proof of a divergent sword of darkness. Despair settled in, belief in hope faded, until footsteps echoed. Someone unexpected approached from the shadows. A cloaked man stepped through the mist, his presence stirring unease among the remaining soldiers. Guards raised weapons and shouted demands, but the stranger calmly declared his purpose without hesitation or fear. With a steady hand, he pointed his blade toward Hanliade, challenging the sword's dark power. Soldiers charged recklessly, shouting to kill him, unaware of the strength behind the hunter's calm gaze. Steel clashed violently as he cut through enemies with swift, precise strikes, overwhelming them within seconds. A cloaked warrior struck fiercely, his blade slicing through the charging knight with calculated, silent precision. Blood sprayed as the armor fell. Shock filled the onlookers while the swordsman calmly lowered his weapon. Two mirrored figures stood with twin blades, an illusion born from the divergent sword he now wielded. The bearded king mocked the sword's magic, dismissing its illusionary power as a mere child's trick. Suddenly, darkness exploded beside him. He underestimated both blade and wielder, calling it misfortune, masked his growing fear. The swordsman calmly explained the sword's power, revealing its potential depends on the wielder's unique aptitude. Startled by the revelation, the king staggered back as multiple illusions surrounded him with overwhelming pressure. He declared this display the sword's true potential, channeling its strength through unmatched mastery and unwavering will. Terror seized the king's expression as reality warped, the surroundings distorting with unbearable sights and piercing sounds. Nightmarish creatures emerged from darkness, grotesque and surreal manifestations of a blade wielded beyond ordinary comprehension. Steel slashed through flesh as panic overtook the king. Stunned by the swordsman's relentless advance, confidence unwavering, he walked forward beside his enemy, revealing a hidden truth that shattered expectations entirely. Possessing aptitude for every divergent sword, he could freely wield and awaken their dormant, terrifying hidden powers. Witnesses trembled as his name was spoken aloud. Vife Lundio, the man known from feared legends. Palu, a curious botanist, roamed far regions to study new plants and catalog unique species. Months of forest research were cut short when a cult seized control, forcing her retreat. Instead of giving up, she set a new goal: seek Elixir, the mystic flower's location. The flower's rumored site was war-torn, so she chose a dangerous path through wastelands. Harsh winds and thirst battered her spirit, yet Palu pressed on, determined to complete her mission. A strange building stood alone in the wasteland, offering supplies where none should exist. Palu cautiously approached the entrance, prepared to retreat if anything inside seemed suspicious or unsafe. Inside, a horned stranger glared coldly, causing Palu to freeze with unease and visible nervous sweat. As she tried to leave quietly, the young man stopped her, recognizing her as a customer. Shrike, a jet-black-haired elf, panicked over her presence, urging others to quickly act more welcoming. A bloodied woman shouted her welcome with a knife, startling Palu into immediate flight. Panicked, she tried to escape, but the woman chased after her, shouting for her to stay. More strangers emerged from the back. One man's cold gaze and scar intensified Palu's growing dread. Convinced they were bandits, Palu readied herself to fight, regretting her choice to enter alone. Luckily, Cleo calmed everyone down, explaining they were just excited to finally have a customer. A kind greeting from Kohaku, the horned girl, warmly welcomed Palu to Poffy Tavern. They offered Palu a hearty dish for free, sincerely apologizing for the earlier misunderstanding and scare. She hesitated briefly but soon gave in, overwhelmed by the delicious taste of the comforting meal. While Palu ate, Cleo and Sophia arranged water and food for her exhausted horse. Thou flustered. Palu accepted their help, realizing these odd people genuinely meant well despite their chaos. Curious about her research, the others eagerly examined her detailed plant notes and identification charts. Surprised, they realized Kohaku had survived eating a deadly fruit listed clearly as highly poisonous. Old memories resurfaced. Palu once endured ridicule for her passion, yet she held onto her studies. Encouragement came as the group volunteered to help memorize plant data, appreciating its unexpected practical value. Suddenly, strangers burst through the door, mocking the shop's location and drawing everyone's startled attention. A bandit group called Varka stormed in demanding liquor and making it clear they'd steal. Without hesitation, Shrike and Safia unleashed swift attacks, sending the intruders flying through the air screaming. Watching the chaos unfold, Palu reconsidered maybe they were scary, especially when their home got threatened. Wounded and wary, the survivors trudged through the canyon, sandstorm rising behind their uncertain escape. Fear settled in as rumors echoed encountering the true Varka now meant certain death. Ahead lay a field of corpses, evidence of a brutal one-sided massacre hidden in stone. Unease deepened as cloaked strangers approached, prompting suspicion of the feared new Manduma order. Before answers came, terrified screams erupted. Realization dawned too late. These weren't imposters, they were executioners. While sandstorms worsened outside, Cleo and Palu took shelter in a quiet desert outpost. Inside, laughter and shared studies lightened the mood as Sophia offered valuable research materials to copy. Cleo's attention shifted after hearing a name whispered with unease, the new Mundama Order. Palu explained they weren't mere bandits, but ruthless zealots spreading chaos across towns under false piety. A shaken man described lifeless enemies, likely drugged, forcing Safia to suspend all field research immediately. Palu admitted traveling alone, prompting concern over her plans to cross dangerous central territories unsupported. She revealed her comrades died in a war 2 years ago, leaving deep emotional scars although sympathy was offered. Palu insisted she had long moved past grief through quiet resolve determined to honor the fallen. She declared her duty to continue their unfinished research. Even if doomed, she vowed to press forward, then quietly apologized for her sudden passion. Encouraged by Palu's resolve, everyone celebrated her courage, cheering for knowledge and her future journey. As joyful preparations began, food and drinks were shared under the dim safety of night. Unseen by the group, hooded riders approached the outpost, their presence concealed by storm winds. Lone figures silently advanced, blades drawn, swiftly breaching the wall with practiced hostile intent. Inside, the group reacted with mixed confidence and caution, unaware of the threat already inside. Assassins realized too late they'd been detected. Their ambush had already begun to unravel quickly. A swift counterattack erupted. One intruder fell instantly, electrocuted before warning could escape his throat. Despite the failed infiltration, attackers regrouped outside. Their numbers confirmed this was no ordinary tavern. Their leader warned of formidable defenders. One wielded wind, another lightning. Numbers alone weren't enough. Undeterred by risk, the masked commander ordered a full assault, intent on crushing all opposition. Amid the chaos, Cleo stormed out, frustrated by the timing of this sudden attack. 3 attackers charged in wielding divergent swords. Safia and Kohaku prepared for immediate close combat response. Blades clashed violently as Safia engaged. Kohaku stood ready, intercepting others before they could advance. Cleo analyzed their strength, realizing uncertainty in enemy technique made them even more dangerous to face. Kohaku sensed a fourth. Cleo stayed alert, recognizing the hidden leader possessed a divergent sword. Through recent training, Cleo gained control over his unstable power that amplified divergent sword abilities. His control method was unusual, compared to steadying a kitten balanced on a shoulder. Trusting allies to fight alone, Cleo vowed to stay focused and not disrupt their rhythm. Shrike unleashed a flurry of attacks, matching multiple enemies despite their fierce and aggressive charges. Earth split beneath her blow. One attacker retaliated by raising stone walls in counter-defense. He assessed the situation grimly, annoyed by the enemy's frustrating and defensive earth element tactics. Zone attacker surged forward, unleashing a wild charge while another repositioned with deadly speed behind. A powerful flame vortex exploded outward, forcing Safia to brace for a surprise close-range ambush. Flame blades cut through wind. Safia struggled as the opponent's swift strike nearly broke through. From afar, Cleo shouted instructions, realizing Safia's elemental disadvantage and urging them to fight together. Safia struggled to coordinate. Despite understanding Cleo's advice, she hesitated under relentless enemy pressure. Distance from Shrike widened. Their opponent's skill and elemental advantage left no safe opening to approach. As Shrike launched another strike, more enemies emerged, forcing him into a 2-versus-1 confrontation. While the battlefield trembled, Cleo watched helplessly, knowing he couldn't fight with his ability suppressed. Kohaku questioned Cleo's assessment. Seeing their disadvantage, she considered stepping in to change the tide. Cleo dismissed the warning, crossing his arms as tension rose among allies facing swift danger. Shrike noticed a flaw in enemy formation, surged forward with sharp momentum, catching their flank unguarded. He launched headlong through the confused ranks, striking with force as sparks erupted from sudden impact. Enemies reeled from the strike, shocked by the gap he covered before they could react. Unfazed by their disbelief, Shrike calmly prepared his next move, unleashing divergent sword technique without hesitation. He unleashed a blinding technique, piercing the enemy with 4 rapid strikes before they could respond. Cleo shouted triumphantly, celebrating the victory with Kohaku, proud of what the Poffy Tavern achieved. Safia admitted her mistake, but Shrike reassured her her presence had opened the path to strike. Despite escaping serious injury, the enemy regrouped, one wounded, another frustrated by the close and dangerous outcome. Shrike stood unfazed, scolding them for failure. While their leader acknowledged his speed exceeded all expectations, the attacks had failed. Their opponents recovered quickly, showing surprising resilience under pressure. As tension rose, Yahello scolded them both for underestimating strength and losing control of the situation. Shrike silently acknowledged their speed, impressed by the lightning user's awareness, while facing two divergent sword techniques simultaneously. Others compared speeds in awe, wondering if the mysterious man behind them held even greater hidden power. Cleo demanded answers, frustrated by the attack, while Kohaku warned they were drawing dangerous attention to themselves. Yahello explained the rumor. Someone claimed a new Mundama hideout was hidden beneath the tavern itself. Cleo exploded in disbelief, denying everything. Furious, their neutral base had been mistaken for an enemy outpost. After hearing the full story, the group admitted fault, realizing the attackers misunderstood, based on false reports. Their suspicion made sense, as tension rose from news about Mundama's movements and a rumored hidden base. Yahello introduced himself as Varka's leader, clarifying intentions and denying association with the bandits from earlier. Everyone debated over who the real leader was, but no one seemed to agree on anything. Eventually, Cleo accepted the title, admitting leadership out loud as Yahello prepared to present his offer. The proposal surprised him join their cause and help build a future beyond simple tavern life. Yahello promised comfort, homes, payment, and purpose, using war against Mundama as a path toward growth. Despite generous terms, Cleo firmly declined, choosing peace over power and rejecting involvement in any war. He extended his offer to the others, claiming their lives would drastically improve under his leadership. Safia and Shrike refused instantly, one citing duty, the other driven by a personal objective involving Blaze. Cleo exhaled in relief as Yahello smirked, realizing their team's loyalty was stronger than expected. He accepted rejection with a grin, but warned that others might try recruiting this valuable group instead. While Cleo prepared to leave, Yahello gathered power, refusing to let negotiations end so easily. Yahello drew a massive crackling blade, shocking everyone as energy surged violently through the darkened air. With diplomacy rejected, he declared his intent force would now decide everything that peaceful talks couldn't settle. Safia gritted her teeth, sword trembling, while Shrike warned her not to let her focus slip. Cleo called out to Kohaku, asking for help, as their enemy's power overwhelmed expectations entirely. He advanced with violent force, targeting Safia directly, vowing to take her, and claimed complete control. A blinding signal flare lit up the sky, halting Scavel's attack and drawing everyone's attention. Wheels roared across the plain as a wagon arrived, bringing unexpected reinforcements just in time. A masked figure emerged, warning that losing either side now would cost him far too much. Palu stood frozen at the tavern entrance, stunned that the bandits were now laughing inside. Those same men who threatened lives earlier were now drinking, singing, and celebrating, like cheerful customers tonight. Confused by the bizarre turn of events, Palu watched strangers treating Shrike like a local hero. Safia soon approached her quietly, calm and composed, despite the chaos echoing from the crowded room. Makira, observing from afar, smirked while realizing Cleo's connection to the elusive Melka's caravan changed everything. She reputation echoed across nations, her wealth rivaled kings, and Cleo knew her personally. Inside, Cleo drank casually while others watched him, frustrated by his indifference and relaxed attitude toward everything. Makira explained her urgency rushing after hearing trouble, and her 5-year bond with Shvel changed everything tonight. Although Cleo joked, he admitted the tavern was just the beginning of something much larger planned. Pressed about his reasons, Cleo vaguely answered they fled war, but his true motive remained unclear. Yahello questioned Cleo's lack of ambition, suggesting that even a ruler's seat was within reach. Cleo dismissed the idea, unconvinced by romantic ideals, saying he barely managed to handle his own life. Kohaku, quietly listening, admitted her only goal was survival. Living through war mattered more than chasing titles. Instead of conquest, Cleo dreamed of aging peacefully, cultivating land, and renovating his tavern to thrive. Hearing this, Cheval's heart shifted, loudly declaring he finally understood Cleo's modest but unwavering vision completely. Cheval insisted he truly understood Cleo's ideals, though others suspected he simply wanted to sound agreeable. Makira revealed Cheval once longed for quiet days, sharing Cleo's simple dream of aging in peace. Reminiscing, he admitted his original goal was to become a fisherman, living by a gentle routine. Others watched with disbelief as Cheval connected instantly with Varka's leader, earning laughter and unexpected admiration alike. Though their visions aligned, Cleo realized Cheval still carried ambition grand enough to challenge the entire continent. Divergent swords defied moral alignment, empowering anyone, in wrong hands, they could destroy countless innocent lives. Unchecked ambition could doom civilization. If a fool seized power, the entire continent might collapse in war. Despite rough edges, Cheval protected the weak, unified bandits, and laid laws for an emerging nation. Cleo recalled past words: heroes don't choose their role. People force that identity onto them instead. Looking at Cheval's allies, he believed in their strength and wished success for peace across continents. Makira hinted her respect extended beyond Cheval, subtly acknowledging another man who stood quietly beside her. Instead of leaving immediately, she explained her visit had purpose, offering support, vital for Cleo's growing tavern. With a cheerful smile, she revealed a dress, claiming it essential for transforming the establishment's atmosphere. A secluded fortress hidden in the valley became home for those avoiding unwanted attention or danger. Cleo spoke quietly, concerned the girl from Gald might complicate things if her origins surfaced. Despite the worries, Sophia tried on the dress, drawing compliments that made her blush in embarrassment. She struggled with a revealing design, unaccustomed to anything but armor and her nation's modest customs. Then he reassured her gently, reminding her that comfort mattered more than expectations or appearances from others. Sophia tried various outfits, but concerns about modesty and practicality clouded each new choice. While others offered opinions, she struggled with discomfort, unsure if any outfit truly represented her current role. A dancer's revealing costume sent her fleeing, overwhelmed by teasing and her own lack of confidence. Eventually, she found a dress she could accept: elegant, modest, and easy to move in. Relieved and smiling, the group celebrated their success and prepared to spend their recent earnings freely. Everyone browsed the market for supplies: books, utensils, ingredients, and tools that might prove useful. Cleo's attention shifted when he noticed a vendor trading weapons, his expression turning quietly focused. A familiar figure at the stall held a blade, prompting Cleo's silent reflection on past battles. Sophia curiously picked up an instrument, but admitted she couldn't play, handing it over to Cleo. Music filled the air as Kohaku sang, her voice lifting spirits and drawing admiration from everyone. Palu revealed her forgotten skill, while another companion impressed everyone by playing the flute effortlessly. Encouraged by their joy, Sophia hesitated, then agreed to dance despite years without practice. Music carried them forward as they danced freely, smiles replacing worry, creating a moment none forgot. As the sun set, they exchanged thanks, each feeling the bond between them had grown stronger. Before parting, Cleo asked one last favor, and Palu promised to meet them again. Makira's group departed with a promise to return, leaving the others waving in quiet farewell. Everyone agreed to rest and sort supplies, reflecting on recent events that passed too quickly. Shrike admitted his new weapon was ordinary, yet still better than having nothing at all. Concerns rose about future battles, and Cleo regretted lacking Blaze, his trusted sword from before. After a moment of silence, Sophia offered to lend her weapon, accepting the need for preparation. Without hesitation, Cleo handed over Blaze, entrusting Shrike with the sword for battles ahead. Palu traveled by caravan through rocky plains, quietly reflecting on her days at Bologna University. Inside the wagon, she revealed her noble background and hardships after her father's sudden passing years ago. Makira, curious and kind, offered guidance and mentioned scholars gathering in Mintalore City for a grand expedition. While sipping tea, Makira promised a letter and warned of strange rumors around the forest. News arrived of a northern swordsman, Vifelundio, whose mastery over divergent swords shocked Palu into silence. Rumors claimed Vifelundio, unmatched in strength, was advancing south, leaving destruction across entire nations. Palu repeated his name nervously, warned by Makira to always be ready to escape danger. Makira recalled a legend linking Vifalandio to an ancient tale from the Lost Fin Kingdom. Curious, Palu mentioned a library text where Vifalandio was revered as a monster-slaying king. Contradicting the tale, Makira revealed Vifalandio wasn't royalty, but a blacksmith who forged extraordinary divergent swords. Vifalandio, once a blacksmith, was remembered as the originator of the deadly divergent swords. His creations unleashed catastrophic wars, and now a strange power pulsed ominously across forgotten ancient ruins. Lone elven warriors stood surrounded by corpses, shocked to witness a descendant of Vifalandio still alive. Dark illusions overwhelmed her vision, erupting violently around her as she struggled to resist the encroaching force. Their blades clashed fiercely midair. Defiant, she vowed to protect the sword regardless of the cost. Chains wrapped around him, yet she charged forward without hesitation, aiming directly for his heart. She struck fiercely, but her expression quickly twisted as his counterattack shattered her balance and resolve. A final cry escaped her lips before steel pierced through, ending the clash with swift finality. Silence fell. Her sword dropped. Vifalandio turned away, leaving behind a broken warrior and an unanswered purpose. From the ground, she cursed his name, demanding to know what he truly sought to achieve. Blood dripped as she defied him, warning that his path would never unfold as intended. Wind swept his cloak as he turned away, silently leaving her broken figure behind in darkness. Shrike stood alone as the feared three-eyed assassins emerged, determined to kill him tonight. He overwhelmed them with sheer force, sparing their lives and demanding they leave and return stronger. Elsewhere, Kohaku expressed concern about lending Blaze, though Shrike's power had clearly grown since wielding it. They recalled Varka's attack, which forced Cleo to lend Blaze, knowing Schwell's sword was dangerously strong. Cleo insisted Blaze belonged with Shrike, not himself, claiming sanity despite doubting his own worthiness. He warned Shrike not to misunderstand. Blaze was lent for protection, not for revenge. Despite past chances, Cleo reminded him to grow stronger before chasing vengeance against any nation. After a silent pause, Shrike accepted the offer, agreeing to stay and lend his strength. 2 months had passed. Kohaku noted Shrike's sincerity, while Cleo trusted him enough to nap. Though confident in Shrike's potential, they noticed his struggle to fully master the power of Blaze. Motivated by Shrike's growth, Safia declared special training to avoid falling behind any further. Determined not to become a burden, she inspired Cleo to train hard alongside her. Just then, Varka's commando unit arrived again, surprising Cleo with their frequent unexpected visits. Though they claimed coincidence, Varka's men confessed they rushed back simply to see Safia again. Cleo realized Safia's charm unknowingly drew attention. Her personality and Makira's clothes only amplified the effect. Tarob ordered his favorite meal again, while the group discussed simple vegetables harvested that morning. Despite war elsewhere, their remote base offered rare peace, a place untouched by constant conflict. Hearing about a new lodging project, they all agreed to help when time allowed. Just as Tarob declared helping others important, a distant explosion echoed, catching everyone's immediate attention. Cleo scanned the horizon calmly, noting the direction of the blast seemed fairly far away. A group of masked riders sped across the land, cloaks trailing as they pursued fiercely. Their commander shouted to kill if needed. Allowing the target to escape wasn't acceptable. Cleo spotted explosive spells flying. Attackers appeared to be divergent sword users chasing someone down. A sudden blast shattered the ground, forcing the enemy riders to break formation in panic. As flames erupted skyward, Cleo was warned just in time of danger coming from above. Everyone looked up in shock as a person plummeted from the sky toward their position. Working together quickly, they managed to soften her landing, before the impact could harm anyone. Concerned, Cleo checked her condition while she remained unconscious, showing only light injuries and exhaustion. She slowly opened her eyes, surprised to find herself safely cradled in unfamiliar but gentle arms. Recognizing something or someone, she mumbled in disbelief, leaving Cleo and Taro visibly confused by her reaction. Without hesitation, the rescued woman blushed deeply and confessed that Cleo looked absolutely dreamy. She thanked him enthusiastically while ignoring others, praising his muscles and clinging tightly with admiration. Safia grew visibly annoyed, silently glaring as the woman openly flirted with Cleo without restraint. Despite assumptions, Cleo's unamused face showed irritation rather than joy, completely rejecting her obvious affection. According to Kohaku, Cleo remained guarded toward overly kind strangers due to past painful experiences. Approaching riders quickly spotted the group, locking eyes with the girl they had relentlessly pursued. Realizing she survived, the masked soldiers prepared to finish what they started without hesitation. Clinging in fear, the girl explained she was still being hunted by dangerous armed enemies. Shock hit Cleo and Tarob as they identified the attackers as members of Mundama Order. Recognizing the battlefield, the enemy planned a swift assault, prompting Tarob to charge in first. A mysterious warrior named Shrike bursts into battle, lightning crackling as his blade slices forward. Enemies shout warnings about his speed, but Shrike counters swiftly, overwhelming them with brutal efficiency. Focusing his energy, Shrike reveals a second sword empowered by flames, shocking the observing enemy. A massive fiery blast engulfs the field, stunning allies and foes with its destructive force. Amid the smoldering chaos, Shrike glares while lifting an injured foe, unimpressed by reckless tactics. Lightning surged violently as the masked attacker screamed, overwhelmed by a sudden powerful electric counterattack. Smoke cleared. 2 enemies collapsed. Shrike calmly sheathed his sword, drawing everyone's awe and jealousy. Friends celebrated the victory, but mist suddenly crept in, raising quiet concern among the group. One girl recalled another pursuer. Her confusion grew. Someone unaccounted for had vanished without a trace. Lurking behind them, the final enemy hid in mist, eyes wide with a deadly intent. Cleo appeared without warning, conjuring power as her sudden presence startled everyone around her. A surge of water magic struck down, but the masked enemy vanished before contact landed. Discussion followed quickly. An illusion-based sword likely cloaked the foe, keeping the group tense and alert. Watching from afar, the fanatics smiled wide, vowing to convert them through forceful belief. The fog thickened rapidly, blinding the group as Cleo shouted, realizing danger was fast approaching. One fighter warned the others, the fog wasn't natural, it was a Mundama executive's illusionary trap unfolding. They recalled past victims lost in illusions, minds shattered by phantoms. No one else could perceive clearly. Suddenly, Tarob froze mid-step, eyes wide in horror, as a hallucinated figure triggered something deep inside. Cleo rushed over. Finding Tarob collapsed, Safia realized illusions had begun warping minds and turning allies paranoid. Galt soldiers emerged from the mist, accusing Safia of betrayal while marching forward with hollow stares. Despite trembling, she steadied herself, recognizing the illusion's grip and bracing to face familiar phantoms. Suddenly, her brother's image appeared, condemning her with harsh words, dredging pain from long-buried memories. Cleo rushed in as Safia collapsed in despair, overwhelmed by guilt and haunting illusionary visions. While calling for Kohaku, Cleo fell into a different scene where cheering soldiers charged without hesitation. Mocking voices echoed through the fog, reviving Cleo's doubt about being seen as greedy. Old comrades smiled warmly, speaking of freedom, but a hidden tension lingered beneath their cheerful words. Sudden resolve filled them as they marched off, determined to avenge fallen friends despite Cleo's hesitation. As he prepared to follow, a soft voice asked if he truly intended to leave. Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched her rabbit, silently begging him to return. From the mist, the mastermind emerged, preaching that every heart hides trauma waiting to be exploited. He boasted endlessly, convinced illusions would cripple minds, twisting thoughts until submission became inevitable and permanent. Kohaku stepped forward without hesitation, stunning him with her sudden presence and calm. Determined gaze claiming immunity, she dismissed the illusions as worthless tricks incapable of piercing her mental defense. His confidence shattered as Kohaku revealed her identity, leaving him confused and reeling from her resistance. Surrounded by floating crystals, she warned him coldly, declaring punishment for interfering with their business operations. Multiple projectiles launched in unison, forcing him to defend against the sudden, overwhelming force of her assault. Breathing heavily, he grinned and praised her strength, astonished by her abilities without a divergent sword. Intent on capturing her, he extended his hand, determined to convert such rare power for himself. Before he could act, Cleo grabbed his collar, stopping him mid-motion with an unwavering, piercing stare. Cleo stepped forward with certainty, identifying the illusionist as the cause behind everyone's mental collapse. With clenched fist and unwavering glare, he swore retaliation for the twisted visions forced upon them. Mocking the sorcerer's confusion, he confirmed the illusion worked, just not in the intended way. Kohaku expressed surprise, but Cleo casually explained his technique, imagining cats to suppress magical triggers and illusions. Experience with illusionists allowed him to resist manipulation, but now something darker began to manifest behind him. Shrike stepped forward, unimpressed by the illusions, his resistance baffling the illusionist and shocking his enemies. Cleo requested a full release of affected allies, while Kohaku calmly reintroduced them as tavern staff. The enemy retaliated, unwilling to retreat, spewing more mist while shouting threats and summoning another illusionary wave. Unexpectedly, allied forces arrived prepared, revealing anti-illusion medicine and tactics that blocked out the sorcerer's remaining influence entirely. Safiya finally collapsed into Cleo's arms, released from the mental strain after enduring overwhelming hallucinations and stress. Realizing he stood alone against reinforcements, the illusionist acknowledged retreat was his only smart option. Though his voice echoed threats, he vanished, vowing future conversion while everyone confirmed Safiya was simply unconscious. Cleo shouted in frustration, mocking the illusionist's dramatic exit and demanding a quieter, less theatrical retreat. Rather than chase, the group prioritized recovery, deciding to return Safiya and the others to safety. Back at the outpost, those affected rested while others shared tea, teasing their still recovering, groggy comrades. Safiya rests peacefully while her allies discuss the strange executive's obsession and sudden retreat. Tensions remain high as the team debates the Order's aggressive behavior and unpredictable recent activities. Tarobe calms worries, confidently stating the Mundima Order will soon be eliminated from the picture. Plans of a decisive confrontation stir doubts about Varka's strength and the enemy's overwhelming numbers. His suspicion confirmed, the idea of assassination surfaces, shaking Tarobe into nervous retreat and silence. Cleo's intuition unsettled the group, but everyone agreed to keep quiet and not alert Chevelle. Assassinating the leader sounded impossible with strong defensive layers and multiple executives still unaccounted for. 7 known executives, each commanding elite divergent sword users, overwhelmed Cleo with the sheer numbers. The founder's influence, magical or charismatic, drew many, delaying would only strengthen their enemy's position. Tarobe formally requested support, offering rewards while emphasizing Chevelle's strength and acknowledging war's unpredictable nature. Acknowledging they were also targets, Cleo promised to discuss things with the others after they recovered. Tarobe, eager for results, boasted about alliances and plans to eliminate the founder of Mundima. Swiftly, a calm voice interrupted the conversation, the woman finally awake and dismissing the assassination plan as pointless. She explained removing the founder wouldn't solve anything. The organization had grown beyond a single leader. With a cheerful clap, she smiled and revealed the truth: she was the founder herself. Everyone froze in stunned silence, unable to process the shocking revelation just delivered so casually and confidently. A disciplined cavalry unit rode across barren plains, cloaked men silently guiding their horses with purpose. Thousands of cloaked soldiers advanced together, silent and focused, forming an overwhelming tide of war. News of 50,000 troops and elite sword users shocked Cleo's fortress into full alert. Cleo shouted in disbelief, learning the invasion's confirmation came from spies and first-hand sightings alike. Morgana quietly apologized, revealing her sudden arrival might have triggered the army's unexpected, massive mobilization. Then she smiled brightly, unaware her arrival would ignite the firestorm of a continent-wide conflict. She explained her death would sanctify her existence, making the Order stronger through spiritual unification. Although shocked, Cleo listened as she admitted her order truly might kill her for gain. A single divergent sword changed everything, transforming their sanctuary into a militant faction with terrifying influence. Morgana revealed the truth power. Hungry executives now steer the order, disguising conquest as divine salvation. Though she hides her identity, the order still insists she must die for symbolic unity. Morgana reflected quietly, recalling how her simple kindness toward the desperate spiraled into unintended devotion. One warning followed another. Conversion was inevitable. Staying meant risking indoctrination, or worse, by the order. Cleo acknowledged their intent to attack either way. Softening the blame Morgana placed on herself, Naria revealed their true aim, claiming Cleo's base as a strategic stronghold with fresh water. The invading force advanced faster than expected, reducing escape time to less than a day. Trying to intercept was dismissed immediately. Enemy sword users outnumbered and outmatched their current strength. 50,000 brainwashed zealots marched without fear. Even defeating hundreds wouldn't change the outcome. Hope emerged through a bold plan to strike headquarters, while Cleo escaped during enemy force division. Naria urged withdrawal. As long as Cleo survived, there'd always be a chance to rebuild. Despite knowing the threat was real, everything still felt distant, like a dream not unfolding. Kohaku remained calm as ever, her steady presence anchoring Cleo's thoughts during the uncertainty. Memories surfaced of rebuilding this place from ruin, turning abandoned stone into something worth protecting. Together they'd cultivated soil, raised walls, built lives. This fortress became home for wandering hearts. Looking at Kohaku, Cleo hesitated. A question hung on his lips, heavier than expected. He knelt before her, uncertain, could just the two of them hold this ground? Others overheard his declaration. He wasn't ready to abandon their home, not without resistance. First, confidence faltered. Kohaku acknowledged their odds were slim if the enemy fought without fearing death. Tarob's words echoed, against an endless, fearless horde, even determined defenders couldn't last for long. Kohaku revealed her restraint. That power she'd held back could still shift how this ends. Releasing a quiet breath, she stepped forward. Returning to her original form would change everything instantly. Kohaku declared her strength confidently, claiming victory would be simple if she returned to original form. The group reacted with disbelief, learning the enemy numbered 50,000, far beyond what seemed manageable. Cleo admitted Kohaku could revert, though her recovery was incomplete despite a month of peaceful living. Remaining in her current form helped replenish magical energy efficiently, allowing her body time to restore itself. When pressed further, Cleo explained bluntly Kohaku's normal form was her adult self, shocking the others completely. Cleo announced that if Kohaku transformed, their base could be saved without fleeing the battlefield. However, Kohaku warned them she'd need a full day before returning to her powerful original form. Realizing the risk, Turob stepped up to defend the base until she could complete the change. Shrike welcomed the incoming army eagerly, viewing the 50,000 soldiers as ideal sparring opponents worth his strength. With determination rising, everyone rallied together to protect the base, while Kohaku prepared for transformation. Boots pounded the ground as cloaked soldiers advanced, while their leader urged them forward with confidence. Concerns about the founders spread among commanders, especially Vipra and Tarumba, who doubted their location. Gradon reassured others with his own sighting, though admitted the founder might have already fled secretly. Invia, calm and precise, confirmed through magic the founder remained near the ruins of the old castle. Gradon grew uneasy, fixated not on people, but on the mysterious water source reported in Wasteland. Invia, familiar with the Wasteland, doubted a spring could exist near the old castle ruins. Despite uncertainty, she pushed forward with conviction, believing the march would strengthen Munduma's power and reach. Inside the castle, Cleo and the others prepared the chamber as Kohaku requested without hesitation. Glowing lines lit the stone walls brilliantly, and Kohaku began her transformation after receiving everyone's full support. Before the ritual began, she reminded Cleo of her warning his presence wasn't needed beyond that point. Kohaku insisted he stay nearby, fearing she'd be unable to protect him during a surprise attack. Cleo refused to back down, believing he had to contribute while others faced the coming threat. He explained his mercenary past, always on the front lines, never one to stay behind quietly. Although her concern remained, Kohaku admitted this situation could happen again without anyone beside her next time. Cleo promised not to act recklessly, confident he'd survive, and return immediately if danger ever appeared. Everyone pledged to protect Cleo, prompting Kohaku to entrust him to their care without hesitation. Final warnings were given as they promised to avoid reckless actions and support one another fully. Mundama's army thundered across the plains, and Cleo froze as fear rippled through the camp. They hadn't anticipated 50,000 soldiers arriving this quickly, pushing everyone's nerves to the breaking point. Despite the overwhelming odds, Tarob and his squad vowed to stand and fight alongside their allies. Neria delivered Chavel's command, protect Cleo above all else, even if it meant leaving others behind. Chavel promised full support, urging Cleo to survive, as warriors rallied under Safia's calming presence. Cleo questioned why Chavel would help, but even Neria couldn't explain his true motives. Shay admitted Chavel favored Cleo unusually much, though it wasn't like him to act this generously. Cleo appreciated the support and promised drinks after battle, showing quiet gratitude despite the looming threat. Far below, enemy scouts discovered blockades and terrain shifts, realizing the defenders had prepared for their arrival. Confident in their strength, the invaders planned to fight head. On recognizing the defenders wouldn't flee easily, ragged followers groaned restlessly, while food and mind-altering substances were handed out to maintain control. Excitement surged as rations were tossed, each person desperate for another dose to escape exhaustion. Artificial strength came with a price, emotions dulled, senses warped, and humanity slowly stripped from their minds. Strategic confidence settled in. The commander proposed an ambush to gauge enemy strength before advancing further. He insisted on leading first, accepting risk, while promising decisive action if his ambush succeeded cleanly. Lightning exploded across the enemy formation, launching bodies into the air as shock and confusion erupted instantly. Panic surged through the ranks when soldiers shouted warnings the defenders had launched a devastating ambush first. One warrior stepped forward, lightning crackling in hand, revealing himself as the feared swordsman of flame. Enemy attackers rushed at him in overconfidence, mistaking isolation for weakness, unaware of the threat approaching. Without hesitation, he seized one soldier's mask and unleashed a blast that tore through clustered forces. Shrike burst forward, shouting with rage, striking wildly, but failing to land a decisive blow. A precise counter followed. Lightning surged as Scarlet Bolt launched, vaporizing enemies in a blinding flash. Nearby commanders watched tensely as charred bodies twitched, and the warrior calmly retrieved another fallen weapon. He assessed the damage quietly, acknowledging 3 kills as only the beginning of his violent advance. A crimson storm gathered behind Shrike as he faced the robed army without a word. Whispers spread of the Kijin clan, long thought extinct after Romalisika's brutal extermination campaign. Commanders warned each other demon descendants fought with deadly instincts and could kill without hesitation. Shrike scanned the battlefield, eager to obtain their swords, yet surrounded by overwhelming enemy forces. The soldiers charged, but lightning erupted from Shrike's blade, halting them before he noticed new movement. Steel clashed violently as Shrike deflected a flurry of attacks from the hooded warrior. Fast-paced movements blurred together, yet the enemy's stance remained sharp and laced with fierce intent. Despite their injuries, drug-enhanced followers surged forward, immune to pain and driven by unnatural resilience. Shrike observed the burning corpses, realizing brute force alone wouldn't end this growing threat. Unfazed by the outcome, he reflected on the technique's power, still undecided on its name. A new enemy emerged, his water-imbued sword resistant to Shrike's flame-based divergent technique. Rather than waste strength now, Shrike chose to retreat, hindered by carrying too many swords. His departure sparked pursuit, though one warned not to follow too far into unknown territory. Suddenly, another fighter descended onto the battlefield, brandishing a glowing sword as enemies prepared defenses. A massive explosion erupted across the cliff, marking the arrival of a powerful new force. Smoke settled as commanders argued over the failed pursuit. Confident Vipera could still recover unharmed. Although blindsided, Vipera had narrowly avoided death, thanks to quick reflexes and overwhelming combat experience. Shrike's attack disabled key enemies, but Cleo knew fanatic soldiers were tougher than they appeared. Even with reduced power, his spells failed to stop their drug-enhanced bodies from immediate retaliation. Past training made them dangerous, but the drugs turned them into tireless, unthinking weapons of war. Reports confirmed Naria and another from Varka's forces were positioned at the ambush site earlier. Though uncertain if it's a base, they agreed Varka found strategic value in the location. Commanders prepared rotating squads of fanatic soldiers to pressure the enemy without pause or relief. Victory was predicted within 3 hours, fueled by overwhelming numbers and unrelenting waves of attacks. Blades clashed violently as the young swordsman launched a precise arc, forcing enemies to retreat. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, scattering bodies as two cloaked figures calmly watched the chaos unfold. Among scorched earth and torches, soldiers struggled to climb, blocked by the piled corpses of zealots. Despite constant attacks, the enemy's divergent sword users remained unshaken, ambushing every move with eerie precision. They suspected Lady Morgana's guidance behind enemy tactics, remembering her as their once great strategic savior. She brilliance surpassed expectation, discerning outcomes from mere fragments others would overlook entirely. Not just terrain or swordplay, her leadership carved their advantage with terrifying clarity and heritage. Warnings rang out not to relax, for Morgana's presence alone turned tides of battle endlessly. Cleo's alert pierced the night, urging everyone into readiness as danger swiftly closed in. With perfect timing, twin sword-wielders descended. Cleo's prediction confirmed the rhythm never lies. Naria's subordinates praised Cleo's decisiveness, acknowledging how sharply his instincts shaped coordinated battlefield orders. Timing their ambush, defenders released water upon the invaders, shocking them before unleashing electrical traps. Commanders observed Cleo's strategy unfold, admitting his growth though still far from the legendary Chevelle. He issued new commands, delegating roles with trust, aiming to rotate Shrike while maintaining pressure. As soldiers advanced recklessly, explosions erupted near the cliffs, warning of a devastating swordsman's return. Frustration mounted as pressure built to strike, but hesitation lingered with morning quickly approaching. Disagreements sparked between caution and urgency, each side balancing tactics against the growing Varka threat. As tension eased momentarily, questions about Invia's absence shifted the focus away from strategy. Joyfully drinking the concoction, the young girl ignored its strange mix, trusting its revitalizing promise. Constant assaults left no time to recover. Cleo silently watched, calculating Kohaku's limited transformation hours. Safiya, though questioned about endurance, calmly reassured them she could still keep going strong. Concerns shifted to Shrike, whose tireless fighting pushed limits, yet his stamina remained impressively high. Confidence strengthened their resolve. They planned to hold position and protect the ground for hours. As she turned to monitor the perimeter, an unexpected presence caught her sharp attention. Too late to react, a cloaked figure loomed behind as a blade swiftly descended. Cleo lunged to protect her, narrowly evading a deadly slash from the cloaked assassin. While recovering, he watched as Safiya launched herself into battle, striking with force and precision. Alerted by the commotion, allies scrambled as Safiya fiercely clashed blades with the approaching invader. Her sword pierced through the shadow, only to discover it was merely a summoned decoy. Before anyone could react, another enemy emerged and landed a devastating blow from behind. Cleo watched in horror as the cloaked enemy struck Safiya. With a sudden, brutal blow, blood-boiled Cleo charged without hesitation. Sword ready, eyes fixed on the enemy standing near Safiya. Kneeling beside her, Cleo held Safiya close. Her wounds were deep. Everyone realized she'd lost. Despite warnings, Cleo stepped forward. He told the others to focus on restraining the fanatic soldiers. Morgana revealed her hidden technique. She had planned this assassination long ago. Cleo was always the target. She regretted acting against orders. Her slip-up had already ruined Graydon's plan to gain followers. Morgana, emotionless, warned Invia. The situation was serious, and mistakes would only bring more disaster. Energy gathered, Invia activated a deadly attack, meant to end Morgana before interference could arrive. Cleo launched in mid-air. Blades clashed violently, as Invia blocked his ambush without losing composure. While the battle raged, Cleo returned to Safiya. Shrike arrived, promising to stop the bleeding. Medical support team rushed in, assuring Cleo they'd take over treating Safiya's critical injuries. He stood nearby, bloodied hand trembling. Anxiety grew stronger as he watched them work silently, Urgency spread despite their efforts. Safia's condition worsened. Cleo demanded more gauze, refusing to give up. Chest tightened with every heartbeat. Doubt crept in, but he couldn't let despair take control. Meanwhile, Shrike clashed with Invia. Her next move summoned dark orbs, threatening to shift momentum. Shrike evaded dark blasts erupting around him. Invia's strange magic and smoke obscured the battlefield entirely. She boasted about her sword's dark attribute, claiming it was strongest under the moonlight sky. Then he rejected her warning. He refused to back down, determined to fight despite the knight's disadvantage. Energy flared violently. Shrike was caught off guard as Invia unleashed the sword's full chaotic power. Fanatic soldiers stormed forward. Explosions shook the field. Orders clashed with panic among the defensive line. Naria unleashed uncontrollable energy. Flames erupted around her, stunning both allies and enemies with sudden force. Power surged wildly. Invia's blade lashed out unintentionally, injuring her own comrades without warning or control. Confusion spread across enemy ranks. One soldier noticed his sword trembling violently, reacting to unseen interference power overwhelmed multiple wielders. Confidence turned to panic, as abilities surged far beyond anyone's expected limits. Others observed in disbelief. Every divergent sword wielder began losing control, driven by mysterious chaotic energy. Cleo struggled to breathe. Pain gripped his body, but he refused to collapse or retreat. Internal pressure built fast. Chest tightened as his vision blurred, thoughts racing with rising uncertainty and pain. Nearby soldiers shouted for war, driven by rage. Cleo hesitated, weighed down by unspoken dread. Rebels urged immediate action. One final decision hung in the air. Cleo quietly agreed, with conditions. His gaze sharpened. One promise anchored them all. No matter what, everyone would return alive together. Breathing staggered, Cleo tried focusing. Safia's life was at stake, yet memories kept flooding in. Morgana silently observed from afar. Her expression changed as she noticed Cleo struggle through the pain. A soldier panicked. His divergent sword acted on its own, overwhelming him beyond his control. Explosions erupted. Desperate voices shouted commands to stop him, but the corrupted weapon wouldn't release. Strength drained faster than expected. Taro warned others to retreat. Before the surging force consumed everything, power spiraled out of control. She urged him to flee before it consumed them both. A memory surfaced, soldiers charging into battle. Cleo clenched his fists, breath ragged, vision filled with fire faces. From past campaigns flashed by, decisions, regrets, and sacrifices weighed heavy across every heartbeat. Enemy troops lined the ridge, hooves thundered downhill. The scale of war became shockingly clear. Volundio was spoken aloud. An ancient name tied to unknown power resurfaced beneath the night sky. Divergent swords lost control. Explosions scattered rock and flame. Panic spread across ranks without warning. Soldiers collapsed one by one. Comrades screamed, cut down by weapons they no longer commanded. Death covered the battlefield. Cleo stood frozen, powerless to stop the slaughter unfolding before him. Fanatics pushed harder. One laughed uncontrollably, thrilled by the chaos spreading through violent, unrestrained power. Memories flooded back. Faces of loved ones pleaded silently. Retreat was ordered before everything was lost. A memory resurfaced, her tiny figure resting quietly, clutching the rabbit doll with trembling arms. Voices echoed in his mind. Cries to stay, pleas never to be left alone. Winds spiraled violently. Soldiers screamed, overwhelmed. Control shattered as divergent powers exploded beyond imagined limits. A soft pat landed on his shoulder. He turned, eyes widening in disbelief. Safia stood firm, determined, eyes locked forward. Her return marked a turning point in everything. She gripped Cleo's coat tightly, concern rising as she saw him standing, still injured. Morgana's healing light shimmered gently, prompting Safia's surprise and Cleo's confusion at her sudden magic. Suddenly, Safia shouted, pointing furiously, alerting Cleo to two meowing cats clinging to his shoulders. Cleo wandered restlessly under the trembling sky, haunted by the cryptic phrase, "Cats on shoulders." Eyes sharpening with resolve, he activated a strange spell. Magical cat spirits appeared and vanished instantly. Meanwhile, Naria collapsed to the ground, gasping. The force around her dissipated as if abruptly cut off. Across the field, enemy forces sensed the change. One questioned the sudden stop in their overwhelming stream of power. A burst of lightning crashed down. Narya rose empowered. Their foe recoiled, shocked. She could still fight. She clashed fiercely with her opponent, shocking the enemy by recovering faster than expected mid-battle. Observers quickly realized no healer assisted her. Instead, she possessed a formidable self-regeneration ability. Cleo recalled her rapid recovery after Kohaku's earlier strike, confirming this strange ability wasn't triggered externally. Unlike before, she remained calm. Power surged through the sword, yet her mind stayed completely in control. With eyes locked forward, she unleashed her full strength, declaring mastery over the divergent sword technique. Unleashing incredible speed, Safia pierced through her opponent with 4 rapid thrusts, overwhelming her defenses instantly. Despite the direct hits the enemy endured, her injuries weren't fatal, but her strength was faltering. A dark fortress loomed in the distance. Unease gripped her as unknown powers stirred awake. Just as Safia prepared to attack again, her enemy vanished, leaving behind only confusion and silence. Spotting Shrike collapsed ahead, she rushed over, fearing the damage had already gone too far. Boulders blocked enemy pursuit. With time briefly on their side, allies began tending to the wounded. Tensions rose as discussions circled Cleo's role. Fatigue spread. But injuries remained minimal among survivors. Racked with guilt, Cleo apologized repeatedly, blaming himself for derailing their careful defensive strategy and overall coordination. Everyone began sharing blame, each thinking their mistake had caused the collapse. Spirits remained heavy, despite survival. Meanwhile, the enemy commander received word. The failed rampage left hundreds dead, forcing an immediate retreat. Strategic disagreement grew among commanders. Despite massive losses, some insisted on launching a full-scale counterattack immediately. Invia arrived injured, warning them of a strange force disrupting the battle in unexpected ways. Suspicion deepened. Powerful magic was sensed within the enemy stronghold, confirming something dangerous remained hidden inside. Hints of an awakening force raised tension. One elder hinted knowingly, refusing to explain his cryptic words. Plans shifted rapidly. Just before launching the next strike, a report from Lord Tarumba suddenly arrived. Despite losing blood earlier, she volunteered to fight alone, while the others regained their strength. Tarobe and his companions offered support. Though tired, their confidence and will to continue remained unshaken. With spirits high, they prepared to hold their ground as enemy forces began advancing once more. However, sounds of movement came from another direction, surprising everyone and casting doubt on their assumptions. Laughter erupted nearby. Lord Tarumba had carved a new path, proudly boasting of his strength. Preparations for an all-out attack resumed. Commanders agreed to enter combat themselves, confident in Tarumba's restraint. A commanding officer pointed forward, ordering troops to advance toward the flickering lights beyond the battlefield. Explosions erupted in the distance as Cleo dashed forward, rallying fanatics to intercept the invaders. Leaders panicked, realizing the enemy advanced silently, using a divergent sword user's ability to forge hidden paths. Cleo took responsibility for missing signs, while others hoped Safia could block the path in time. Safia discovered the trail, then struck hard with explosive force, halting the enemy's surprise assault immediately. She froze as a powerful enemy charged, crackling with energy and aiming to stop her completely. Before his strike connected, another figure intercepted with force, clashing mid-air. In a sudden explosive collision, Shrike shouted to take over the fight, urging Safia to secure the path without hesitation. Safia successfully sealed the path, but an enemy commander laughed, mocking her efforts with unwavering confidence. The massive commander rallied his hooded army, commanding fanatical soldiers to charge forward without holding back. Several masked soldiers collapsed across the battlefield, while Narya struggled to stay conscious and regain control. A thick mist began creeping across the area, stirring panic as a hidden enemy approached silently. Illusion magic disrupted the battlefield. Commanders realized their blockade had failed, and enemy forces began overwhelming positions. Cleo's group debated their options, knowing fatigue had worn them down and reinforcements were unavailable or unfit. Doubt surfaced among the defenders, but others pushed forward, determined to resist even against impossible numbers and odds. Cleo wrestled with fear and doubt, knowing the wrong decision could doom everyone relying on him. A memory of Kohaku surfaced, promising to protect him with unwavering resolve and youthful confidence, rather than defeat. What truly frightened him was seeing his comrades fall in vain beside him. He chose to act, calling for space. Cleo raised a flare to signal the next move. Elsewhere, a fierce clash raged on. One fighter stayed standing, battered but unyielding against a relentless enemy. Shrike refused to back down, striking back with resolve despite overwhelming odds and the enemy's taunts. A sudden flash lit the battlefield sky, alerting allies that a retreat had been signaled immediately. As surprise spread through the group, some hesitated, unsure why the order came so abruptly. Demonic lightning erupted with thunderous force, covering movement as fighters withdrew under the confusion it violently created. Enemies scanned the smoke-filled field in disbelief, realizing the defenders had vanished without leaving a trace. Commanders issued orders to climb while cautioning restraint, convinced the defenders were nearing their final moments. Tension grew inside the castle as warriors demanded answers, fearing collapse if enemies broke through. Despite their doubts, Cleo explained the plan: retreat through escape paths while traps slowed fanatic advances. He insisted on staying behind, determined to stall the enemy alone until Kohaku returned to help. Skepticism filled the room, but Cleo's conviction and earlier insight began to shift their hesitation. Confidence surged as a bold plan formed to push the divergent swords into chaos once more. If triggered again, their uncontrolled frenzy might delay enemy progress long enough to survive until dawn. Some doubted the difficulty, but Cleo insisted they retreat to avoid accidental activation among their own. Kohaku questioned the toll it took, pointing out the cost of activating such a wide spell. Though he denied concern, Cleo's fatigue was clear, and warnings about spell exhaustion couldn't be ignored anymore. Strategic analysis revealed why the enemy hesitated: fear of berserk swords and gaps in unified coordination. Despite confidence, fatigue worsened. Others noticed Cleo's limit and pressed him to acknowledge the obvious truth. He panicked, worried honesty would inspire reckless bravery from someone unwilling to retreat when truly necessary. As predicted, one comrade declared her resolve to stay even as enemy soldiers began advancing en masse. Enemy commanders continued deployment. Thousands climbed and reformed ranks, ready to press forward in overwhelming disciplined force. Graden mocked their resistance, confident no strategy could overcome the overwhelming size of his army. Cleo clarified his intent: he wasn't giving up, only acknowledging how little time remained realistically. Leadership recognition made him a valuable hostage, especially to sway Shrike and Safia through pressure. Morkana's situation proved riskier, as her life itself was listed among the enemy's objectives. Although Kohaku surpassed others in combat, even she couldn't act if allies were taken hostage. She volunteered to take Cleo's place, but he rejected her due to her crucial role. Confidence in Kohaku's strength reassured them. Yet Cleo reminded everyone of his specific combat limitations. Because Safia was still uninjured, she received the order to protect the group during retreat. Everyone accepted Cleo's plan. While they escaped, he stayed back to trigger the berserk transformation. Despite enemy pressure, Cleo felt calm. His fear faded, replaced by a strange sense of familiarity. Cleo watched the stars above, grateful for calm, but aware danger hadn't fully passed yet. While soldiers prepared, Cleo raised his voice, determined to fight despite being a mere survivor. Far away, the girls screamed in frustration, heart torn between fear and the urge to stay. Moments later, Cleo turned in shock, finding her back again, trembling, eyes filled with tears. She argued desperately, fearing his plan, begging him to reconsider before risking everything against Safia. Reminded Cleo of her vow to protect him, echoing words she'd already given Kohaku. Shrike stepped forward, revealing Safia had nearly died. He doubted any plan could go perfectly. As imagined, Cleo froze, stunned by Shrike's decision to stay. Shrike desired strength, enough power to destroy an entire nation. Determined to fight, Safia ran ahead. Friends yelled, pleaded, but she rejected their worries and charged forward alone. Frustrated, Cleo shouted at them both, demanding caution. The girls coldly reminded him he wasn't one to speak. Shrike criticized their recklessness, yet still watched them closely. Kohaku's sudden presence left everyone stunned. From the clouds above, the fox-eared woman observed quietly, admitting their boldness oddly suited them after all. Kohaku appeared before everyone, standing tall despite Cleo's warning about her recovery time. She reminded Cleo of the importance of preparedness, never wasting even a second of advantage. Sudden explosions shook the surroundings, but Kohaku remained calm and turned toward the battlefield without hesitation. Cleo watched anxiously as she advanced, clearly weakened, yet still determined to protect them all. Facing forward with scythe in hand, Kohaku declared herself ready to handle the threat alone. The advancing soldiers halted as a lone figure approached, her presence forcing immediate caution among ranks. Marching steadily under the moonlit sky, Kohaku was quickly recognized as the rumored white-haired demi-human. Speculation rose among the enemy, they feared her power and suspected illusions masked her true form. With a fanatical grin, the bearded commander unleashed his forces, ordering Squadron 1 to engage immediately. Before any soldier could react, Kohaku struck first. A crushing blow silenced the commander instantly. Soldiers gasped in horror as their commander, Greydon, collapsed instantly from Kohaku's overwhelming counterstrike. Boulders rained from above with devastating force, breaking through formations and triggering chaos throughout the enemy ranks. As dust settled, Kohaku stood calmly, surrounded by floating crystals, glowing with immense magical power. Safia stared in disbelief, struggling to comprehend the raw speed and power behind Kohaku's earth spell. Desperation spread as soldiers realized the white-haired demi-human possessed terrifying magical dominance they couldn't withstand. Confident soldiers pressed forward, dismissing her spells as trivial, believing blind faith alone would prevail. Without hesitation, she summoned colossal figures from the earth, calling them forth as her earthen warriors. Shouts and confusion spread quickly as no one, not even Cleo, recognized what they were. Even with little knowledge, Cleo knew her strength firsthand and feared what she might unleash next. Despite their size, the warriors moved slowly, prompting enemies to strategize by targeting their exposed legs. Enemy leaders grew tense, recognizing her summoning surpassed Envia's, calling forth multiple entities simultaneously with ease. Orders were barked out to disregard the earthen golems and focus attacks on the demi-human. Despite relentless attacks from agile swordsmen, the summoned giants endured, slowing enemy advance with massive resistance. Confident shouts echoed among soldiers, believing victory was near if they could close the remaining distance. Calmly watching from afar, she reminded them through action they hadn't reached her just yet. A single tap from her scythe triggered violent tremors beneath the approaching enemy's feet. Massive spikes erupted from underground, shattering formations and sending entire squads scrambling in fear and confusion. Cleo's earlier warning rang true as stunned allies admitted her power surpassed anything they'd imagined before. Casually resting her chin on her hand, Kohaku admired the towering mountain she had conjured. Enemy soldiers stared upward in disbelief, powerless before the spell's scale and unsure how to respond. Crystalline blasts launched in unison from above, forcing the panicked troops to brace for impact. Explosions ripped through the battlefield, crushing squads beneath debris as surviving soldiers called out for Greydon. Desperation grew among commanders, who demanded Kohaku be dragged down before she cast another mountain. Level spell, agile swordsmen launched upward, rushing through clouds, determined to close the distance and disrupt her casting. Before they reached her, a lone warrior surged forward, cutting past debris with unmatched speed. He launched himself forward, body glowing with energy. No choice remained, his mission still wasn't complete. A powerful impact cracked the stone as shockwaves raced forward, ripping through the cliff without hesitation. Toxic fumes surrounded the enemy, but the girl named Kohaku stood unfazed by the trap. Wooden spikes erupted violently, striking him mid-air. Panic spread among allies as another warrior fell. From above the battlefield, an ally watched proudly. The distraction had worked, buying precious time. Envia gathered fierce wind magic, exploiting her elemental edge over the earth. Type demi-human now facing her. Shouting with fury, she launched an attack, convinced Kohaku posed greater danger than Lady Morgana ever had. Unexpectedly, a wave of water engulfed Envia completely, trapping her inside a swirling orb of magic. Observers panicked. As they realized Kohaku wasn't using a sword, her power surpassed elemental boundaries entirely. Cleo calmly explained Kohaku's secret: psychokinesis, freely manipulating objects through infused magical energy, not spellcasting alone. Chunks of rock floated unnaturally as Kohaku's spell expanded, shocking enemies into stunned, breathless silence. Despite drugged resistance, panic overtook the soldiers. Their will collapsed, overridden by primal terror and confusion. Retreat began on both sides. Allies hesitated, unsure whether to stay, while Cleo dashed ahead. Fanatics begged for orders. Gradan could only watch as discipline crumbled and soldiers fled in chaos. Fear finally gripped even the leaders. No one dared challenge the overwhelming force they had witnessed. Overwhelming magic filled the sky. Soldiers stared in awe, unable to believe what they were witnessing. Morgana stepped forward with a calm smile, her presence quietly challenging the chaos from afar. With firm steps, she called out to Kohaku. Undeterred by screams or magical destruction around her, she raised her hands, asking for forgiveness on their behalf, hoping to stop further devastation. Hearing her voice, Kohaku paused. Recognition softened her expression as she whispered, "Morgana." Desperate shouts echoed across the battlefield. Kohaku's allies pleaded for her to end the overwhelming assault. After a brief silence, she released her magic. The immense water blades dissolved and began falling. Twin waves crashed beyond the cliffs, spilling into the valley. Her power left behind reshaped terrain.